just, yeah, you're recording.
Okay, we are recording. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming and attending tonight's meeting of the Bedminster Township Committee. This is our regularly scheduled April 5th, 2021 meeting. I'll recognize that we have a full complement of Township Committee participating in tonight's meeting. In person here with us, Committeeman Stevenson, Committeewoman Mareski, Committeeman Hickey, and attending by Zoom is Committeewoman Fernandez. Ms. Sullivan, who is participating remotely, may we please have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Sure.
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville, also to the Burnsville News in Whippany, to all subscribers, and then posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2021.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. May we please stand, well, may you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so before we start tonight's meeting, a couple things I'm just going to go over as I've been doing for the last year. It certainly feels that way. Going over the COVID numbers for Bedminster. As of today, there's 384 total confirmed cases in Bedminster. We remain at 5 fatalities. So we've actually been at that number for the 5 fatalities for several months now. Once again, any fatalities is not good, but we've been steady at 5 for several months, so it's good to see that is not increasing. Reminder, everyone, to keep up the vigilance, social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands. Vaccinations are more and more accessible. And the governor today actually indicated that vaccinations will be available starting on April 19th to all New Jersey residents age 16 and over. If you're interested in vaccines, they're available. You can schedule them. And if you want them, please do so. We will open up the floor right now for public comments. So this is the one opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or make any comments. To do so, if you are participating by Zoom, go to the bottom of the screen under participants. There's a little tab down there to raise hand. Raise hand and you'll be put into queue for comments. And if you're participating by phone, you don't have a raise hand option on your phone, but you can dial *9 on your phone's dial pad, and that will do the same thing to identify you as wishing to make a comment.
Any comments, Mayor?
No comments? Okay, so no public comments.
Wait, I have one.
Oh, there is one.
Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Garcia.
Yes, can you hear me?
Once again, name and address, please.
Vincent Garcia. I reside at 377 Finch Lane, Long Meadow, Bedminster.
Great.
The
Hey,
reason
Mr. Garcia.
yes, reason I'm calling, of course, is definitely a topic that's going to be discussed today regarding the ordinances for the marijuana laws that are going to occur. I believe the time frame is these ordinances have to be in place by August 21st in order not to be caught in the 5-year lockdown. I only wanted to bring up just to reiterate my concerns that hopefully some ordinances will be put together and basically drafted and presented and go through the process of hopefully having them go through the reviews and have it processed and voted on by August 21st. I believe that allowing marijuana to be smoked in public would be a detriment to the community. I wish we could protect the rights from for our residents, families, and children who do not want to smell this in the neighborhood, walking on our beautiful trails, at the parks, or at the shopping malls. We should do everything we can to protect what we have in Bedminster. I fear for the exposure that will happen for the children and families if nothing is done. I believe that the regulations that go along with the dispensaries and sales have not yet been outlined by the state. The deadline for the regulations, of course, have to be the deadline for the regulations that the state will be submitting is actually one day after the deadline for the townships to be able to ban marijuana. So it's interesting that it's a catch-22 there. And I think it's to the interest to serve Bedminster interests to pass these ordinances and cover ourselves for 5 years at least. The township should have this enacted so that we can learn from the lessons from other townships who decide to not pass any ordinances on this. And we shouldn't be caught in this. Quoting from Bridgewater Councilman's Timothy Ring, I really believe that for the state to ask us to make a decision today without knowing what all the rules are and how these facilities will operate in our town is premature of the state, quite frankly. And I really feel for that yeah, I think it should be that Bedminster Township err on caution, at least pass these ordinances so that at least we're covered for 5 years. We could always change them during these 5 years. That's the benefit. But doing nothing, we're locked. And that's a concern of mine. And also in consideration that Bridgewater tonight is going through a public review of the ordinances, the 4 ordinances they drafted and submitted in the last council meeting in Bridgewater. Also that Chester to the left of our township had passed ordinances previously and we'll be looking into it. And Burness Township to the north of us, bordering the north of us, is discussing and looking at this, being that Bridgewater's furthest along. And so I just wanted to bring this up, that we should work with the, like Bridgewater, maybe use their ordinances as a template. Maybe that's already been done to maybe speed up the process to go through and start this process, at least at the Bedminster level. So that's what I want to bring up.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Garcia, for those comments. And the one thing I will assure you on is that this township committee is not going to miss any deadline that the state has imposed on us regarding cannabis regulation, cannabis ordinances. If there's going to be any action, we will certainly do so within the specified time. If there's any other questions regarding cannabis or the marijuana legislation and the opportunities for the municipality to take action or not take action, I'd suggest that we keep those comments on hold for now. We'll run through the presentation in just a few minutes, and after the presentation, we'll open up public comments again. But at that point, those comments will be specifically on the marijuana and cannabis issue. So if there's any other non-marijuana, non-cannabis related public comments, now's the opportunity. And Ms. Ray, anyone else?
I see no other comments.
Okay, so we'll proceed with the meeting. And Mr. Garcia, and for any other residents who are participating or observing tonight, your opportunity for questions on marijuana, what the town can do and cannot do, we can save those comments for after the presentation from the attorneys from McElroy Deutsch, who are our township council. So there is some other items on our agenda, and I'm going to move some things around. And what I'm going to move around first is a resolution, which is resolution 2021 051. So if everyone Township Committee can pull out that resolution. Resolution 2021-051 is a resolution appointing Police Officer Thomas J. Polito to the position of Sergeant in the Bedminster Police Department effective April 1, 2021. And I'm just going to, let me read the resolution. Whereas there exists a vacancy in the position of Sergeant in the Bedminster Police Department, and whereas there is an ongoing need for a qualified individual to fulfill those duties, and whereas an interview process has been conducted and yielded an eligible candidate for the position as per section 2A-6.4 and 2A-6.5 of the Bedminster Township Personnel Policy. Now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Bedminster in the County of Somerset that Thomas J. Polito be promoted to the position of Sergeant in the Township of Bedminster Police Department effective April 1, 2021. Chief Rock, Chief Rock, there it is. Come up to a microphone. Any comments or any further explanation on this resolution?
Well, the explanation is very excited this evening to be filling the vacancy of sergeant position and the patrol unit within Bedminster Police Department. The process I thought went really well. We posted it. We had a couple applicants apply. We sat together. We had an oral interview board, and it made me proud that the quality of officers from within the ranks. And congratulations to Detective Polito, now Sergeant Polito, for coming out on top.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from Township Committee members?
Mayor, I just want to comment that I had the privilege of sitting in on those interviews, and certainly Sergeant Polito was well worthy of the decision. I just wanted to echo the chief's comments. I think we're in a good position here in town. We had 3 exceptional candidates. It was a hard decision because they were all very, very good and qualified, but I'm confident the chief got the decision right. And the good news is that for the years to come, we've got folks waiting in the wings that I think could elevate to the position and do a fine job as well. So congratulations to all of the candidates, and especially to Sergeant Polito.
Great, and I just want to reiterate, I also, same as Committeeman Stevens, had the pleasure of serving on that sergeant promotion panel. And it's clear that the 3 candidates that Chiefy presented, they are committed to Bedminster Township, have a great knowledge of the township, a great working relationship with all our residents. And, that's kudos to you, Chief, for having such a staff and such a good bench for those opportunities as they come up. Bedminster is in terrific hands with you and all our police. There's no other questions or comments. May we have a motion to approve resolution 2021-051?
So moved.
Second. Your roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Ms. Moreski. Aye. Ms. Fernandez.
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so Sergeant Polito, effective April 1, there's one more thing we have to do, which is to swear you in. So I'm going to ask for you to come on up. We'll give the oath of office. We'll do it right in front of the camera. I'll come on down. And we got a Bible. So if there's someone you'd like to hold it for you. Okay, we'll pull you up in front of the camera and you're gonna hold the Bible. Okay, well, I'm a good looking guy. Look at the camera. Okay, so I'll have this in front of us. So I, Thomas Polito, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance, to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state. To the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state. Under the authority of the people. and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Sergeant of Bedminster Police Department, all the duties of the office of Sergeant of Bedminster Township, according to the best of my ability, according to the best of my ability. And that I will not use my office, to grant preferential treatment, nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage, not available to the general public, so help me God. Not available to the general public, so help me God. Thank you. Tom, how long have you been with Bedminster Police?
25 years and 8 months, maybe.
25. So in that time, Tom has become a familiar face to all our residents, to all our businesses, knows the town back of his hand, and has a strong and deep connection to this town. It's evident to all of us, certainly everyone who's on police promotion, and I go a little further back than really most of the other township committee, having gone through some discussions with you in the past, and they've all been terrific. Tom, you're a gentleman, and you are a shining example of what we look for here in Bedminster. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the time.
And you want some photos with the family while we're up here?
Sure.
This is where Judy, can you come in and take some photos? Come
Right in there.
Is this in the way?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, we had to finish with masks.
That's okay.
Nice.
Yeah, yourself good.
There's more technology.
I cried on that one.
Meeting is over yet, then.
Oh, well, I thought if it anything, I cry every time I open my mouth around here. Every time somebody else opens their mouth, they say something nice about the town, the waterworks start. It's awful.
So it is, doing the police promotions is terrific. It's an opportunity to see careers advance. And, certainly Officer Polito, Detective Polito, and now Sergeant Polito reflects the advancement that's available to our Bedminster officers. And, it's really great to see that step in the career moving forward. And once again, Bedminster is in great hands. There's another change in the meeting agenda. So under new business, we have, let's see, let's get the formal title. Presentation, Municipal Control, Rights and Obligations under New Jersey Cannabis Law by the attorneys from McElroy Deutsch. So John Bellardo, who is with the McElroy Deutsch law firm, has brought with us two attorneys from that firm's cannabis practice group. And we are going to turn the meeting over to them to give an overview of the recent marijuana cannabis legislation that has been passed. And this regards the legalization of recreational marijuana. So this presentation is not regarding medicinal marijuana use. This is on recreation marijuana, on what municipalities can do regarding consumption, sales. Mr. Garcia made the reference to smoking in public and to cultivation and production. So the floor is almost yours. Okay, John, come on up.
Yes, they're both from our Cannabis Law Department. Raquan Muzan, who is not only state, but a national expert, I might say, and makes presentations all over the place on a regular ongoing basis, heads their Cannabis Law Department. And Ms. Riley, Melissa Riley, works with us and works with Raquan. So without further ado, I am going to take a seat in the back and let both of you run.
Thank you.
So Melissa has been with us in the past, but for Quan, this is your first time here.
And thank you very
All
much.
right, so
Jacobs. I appreciate
it's-
the invitation.
You now have the meeting.
Well, this is gonna be fun. Thank you very much for the invitation. As John said, I am the chair of the Cannabis Practice Group at McElroy. I've been doing that for the last couple of years. Prior to that, I was the general counsel for the Senate Majority Office for 4 years. So during that period of time, we were developing the laws, helping write it and draft it.
And for Quan, you don't have to, you're probably better off just going straight to the camera.
All right,
Yeah.
so I've been involved with this since it was just an idea that was memorialized in a 50-page piece of legislation that is now 250 pages. So feel free to ask questions as we go through this. I promise you, in the next 20, 25 minutes, you will understand this better than you did when we sat down. Thanks. So this is the overview, the highlights. Growing, selling, distribution, and delivery will be permitted if you have a license. Possession of up to 6 ounces, no longer illegal for those over 21. They're gonna assess taxes both on the state and the local level, which we'll talk about. And low-level marijuana convictions will be expungable. In order to get this all done, the state has set up Cannabis Regulatory Commission, made up of 5 full-time people. The governor appointed 3 people, the Senate president appointed 1, and the Speaker of the Assembly appointed 1. It's in, but not of the Treasury, and they'll oversee all of the New Jersey cannabis industry.
So the licenses are separated into 6 different classes. Each class represents a different aspect of the cannabis business, as you can see. So we're gonna go through one by one. First is the cultivator. So that license is solely to grow the product. They cannot sell it to us as consumers. They are only permitted to sell to other licensees. There's going to be a limit on 37 full-size cultivators for the first 2 years. But there is a way to get around that, which we'll get into, called a micro business, which is a small, very minimal business that they can grow.
Can you, is there any detail on what a full-size cultivator is?
Well, the state is talking about having a limit of 30,000 square feet of canopy space, they call it. So that's the space where you're actually allowed to grow. Maybe you'll have other space to dry the stuff, and you'll have other space for office, equipment, and stuff like that. But it's up to 30,000 square feet, more than 2,500 square feet, we could call a micro business, which we'll talk about later. There's gonna be a limit of 37 of those statewide. That was a political decision. And it includes the ones that already exist, which is about a dozen, and the ones that are gonna be awarded in from 2019 round, which is another 5 or 6. So there's gonna be 16 additional.
Do they know how they're going to give those licenses out? Who will be the 16?
No, we don't know that yet.
Okay.
It's gonna be a hard fought battle for those.
It sounds like our liquor license issues already.
So class 2 is manufacturer. That's what you think of. They're turning the plant that was just grown by the class 1 licensee into something that someone would want to buy, whether that be an edible or a tincture or a lotion. They are able to sell to other licensees, but again, this type of license will not be able to sell to consumers. They are not a retail business.
And real quick, so is there any licensing associated with transporting from the cultivator to the manufacturer?
Getting to that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Getting to that. But the manufacturer, this is key. Remember, your citizen talked about smoking in public.
Mhm.
You'll learn there is a lot more ways to consume cannabis in 2020 than smoking. People drink it, beverages and tinctures and lotions and all sorts of things like that.
What is a tincture, by the way?
It's like something you put under your tongue.
So it's like a gummy or is it?
No, it's like an oil.
It's how they do essential oils. They'll have them in little eyedroppers and you can put them in a fluid, whether it be tea or water.
That's
And it just gives you a
Got it.
little tiny drop of something.
Got it.
right. So you can put it under your tongue or put it in your coffee.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So the third class is wholesalers. Exactly what it stands for. They're going to be able to purchase and store the cannabis. And again, this type of licensee, if permitted in Bedminster, would not be able to sell to any residents. They're only going to sell to other license holders.
Are there taxes at each one of these sales? Because we're already up to level 3, so,
Yes,
okay.
we'll get to tax.
I'm sure we will.
That's a highlight.
I'm in the wine business, so I'm seeing a lot of things that are similar.
Sure.
So I'm sure they took some of this from that.
Lots of it. Lots
Okay.
of it.
So Mayor, this is what you asked about. Class 4 is the distributor or the transport license. This is just gonna be large trucks. So if the municipality wants to permit one distribution license, it would essentially be a parking lot with a truck parked there. They can temporarily store the product if necessary to engage in the business of transportation, but they're not a wholesaler. That's not the purpose of this license.
So the distributor would take from the cultivator to the manufacturer to the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler to the retailer. So all of that entire chain of custody is regulated under or is carried out by the distributor license.
Right, but keep in mind, you don't have to have a distributor license to do that. So the state of New Jersey, which is different than other states, the actual manufacturer and cultivator is allowed to transport it themselves.
Okay.
We don't know what the rules around that's gonna be, if they're gonna require you to have a truck with 2 people with guns, we don't know that, but they will be allowed to transport their own stuff.
So this is what everyone has been debating about and thinking about when they saw that weed is now legal. This is the dispensary license. This is the only licensee that can sell to consumers that will end up ingesting the product. You are only allowed to sell on the premises, and if permitted by both the state and the municipality, you are allowed to operate what is called a consumption area.
Now, this is the most controversial part of this thing, and we've given this to quite a few different municipalities, and this is probably the most controversial. Now, the reason why this is here is because we have several senators, assemblymen that represent urban districts, and they have a lot of people that live in public housing and apartments, and they wouldn't be able to consume in their homes. So it was required to put a consumption area in the bill to allow these people to be able to partake in the industry. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a bar for the consumption of cannabis.
Now, the class 6 delivery service is essentially the Uber Eats of the cannabis business. So the licensee will be able to set up like an app and a website, and a resident can just go on, order it through the app. This type of licensee will then go pick it up and bring it to whoever ordered it. A big important note, you cannot prevent this type of licensee from delivering to Bedminster residents. You can prohibit a licensee from establishing, you can prohibit licensing class 6 licenses in Bedminster, but you cannot prohibit the deliveries.
So, and what would prohibiting the license mean? That would be setting up a business for someone with cars and all they're gonna do is drive back and forth?
Correct, it's essentially Uber Eats, so it might look like just a store that has, they're not gonna be selling the product, they're not gonna be storing the product, but maybe they'll have their computer and the software will just be licensed here. And then people will be able to sign up. You have to go through a background check and everything in order to be a delivery person.
Is this the type of thing that, I mean, do you anticipate this just being run out of someone's house where they're just going to use their personal vehicle and make deliveries? Or is the industry too premature that we can confidently say it's going to run like Uber Eats, where it's just going to be, you sign up and you're going to have this you're going to have this area, people are going to ask you to make a delivery? Or is it going to be something a little more sophisticated where it's going to require establishing an office of some kind with a physical mailing address, where there's going to be we mentioned storefront, even though it's really not a store. This is really just, as Melissa said, it's going to be your phone, your computer, and your car keys.
Doesn't it have to tie back to a dispensary though at some point? I mean, how does the delivery service get product?
I would expect, the answer to Mayor's question, I would expect it to be more complex than someone just setting up a car, because there's a lot of requirements that the state's gonna put in place. Like that insurance is gonna have to be $2 million. The car is gonna have to have no marks on it. You're gonna have to have a lockbox. Everybody that delivers is gonna have to go through a special training and get a license, which is gonna cost you $1,400, $1,500. So I don't think it's gonna be all these independent contractors out there just driving around. You're gonna have to go through so many hoops to be able to do it. What I'm expecting is a company to set itself up, buy 2 cars, take 2 people through the training, and then deliver that way. And to answer Doug's question, they'll be able to go to the different dispensaries and pick up from there and then drive it to wherever.
So essentially that would become the Uber Eats. You just
Right.
Go to the dispensary.
go to the dispensary and then make your delivery.
This sounds really dangerous.
That's why there's gonna be no marks on the cars, and you're not gonna know what they're carrying. They're gonna have to have GPS in the car. But I understand your concern for sure.
Anticipated primarily credit card or PayPal or other electronic transmissions versus cash for
If
purchases?
it's allowed, with cannabis being federally illegal. I don't know.
right.
That's
can't-
right. That's right.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Right.
scheduled.
And for Quan, maybe you and Melissa can also hit upon that issue, because while
What's the
No banks.
New Jersey, while the legislature and the governor have passed these laws, it still remains a regulated substance at the federal level.
Right.
And since it's regulated at the federal level, federally chartered banks won't touch them.
There you go. So you will at least initially, until that loosens up, have to pay cash like you did the pizza delivery when you were in college.
Or debit card. Other states utilize debit cards. Like when you make an ATM withdrawal, you put your PIN in, debit card. Credit cards are not allowed because of what the mayor said about the federal prohibition.
That is correct.
So that comes back to Renee's point about possibly being dangerous, because now you've got product and cash.
Right. And you, like Melissa said, you can't prohibit that. So if there's no dispensaries anywhere near Bedminster, someone's gonna be driving from New Brunswick with cannabis in the car, delivering it to you.
And then obviously if
Scary.
you leave the product in the car to go make the delivery, or they come down, where someone comes down to your car. It's there's going to be some logistics that we have to work through. And just to reiterate what Melissa said is, while we can prevent the delivery service from establishing a business in Bedminster, Bedminster cannot stop, prohibit, or restrict the deliveries themselves to Bedminster residences or Bedminster businesses.
Right.
Or any other spot in Bedminster, right? So you say, hey, meet me at blank, blank, blank for my pickup, unless that's something that we're gonna see
No, they're
later
not gonna
on.
allow, you're gonna have to have an address.
Okay,
And that's one of the protective mechanisms. You don't wanna have them give you a empty parking lot and they're waiting there to rob you, right? So there has to be an address. You have to walk up to the house and check the ID, make sure the person's 21.
Can I interject? I just have a question. Is there currently a a delivery service in place for medicinal marijuana that might be a model for this?
They're talking about it. I don't know if anyone's actually doing it yet.
Okay.
It won't be long. It won't be long because there was a lot of discussion in the legislature about having a delivery service. And the reason why it's here is because medical patients required it. They were like terminally ill and like, we have to have delivery. So once that opened the door, so.
But there's nothing currently in place. I was just wondering. Okay, thank you.
I think in other states have it, but New Jersey does not.
And then presumably since it's a federally banned substance, it can't go through the US mail, at least not legally.
No,
Oh,
no, I hope not.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no. And I've had clients that mention, can I send it in the mail, advertise on the internet? I'm like, be careful, it's federally illegal.
Right.
Post office is federal.
but
Right.
FedEx.
But it would travel across the state.
You know,
I wouldn't recommend that.
You know, you talk about that there,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
heard on the radio this morning, an ad for, do you need your medical marijuana prescription?
Mhm,
Call this number
mhm.
and a doctor will prescribe you. And it said, you will either get the prescription or your money back.
Wow.
So it basically said 100% guaranteed, you'll get your prescription card.
Right.
And that was on, you know, regular radio. I was kind of surprised that, you know, that the FCC would allow that, but, you know, I guess until someone says they can't, they'll
do it.
This is that micro business license that we were discussing before. It's the legislature's way to kind of grow small businesses and get New Jersey residents involved. So if you are granted a micro business, say a micro business cultivation license, it has to be 100% New Jersey owned. Notably, 51% of the owners and employees must reside in that town. So if Bedminster said, all right, we're gonna allow one micro business cultivation license, 51% of its employees and owners must be Bedminster residents.
Now, and that micro business applies to each of the licenses?
Correct.
So a micro business for, let's see, class 1, class 2, all the way through class 6.
Correct.
Right.
And are there further details? You talked about, what was it 2,500 square feet of growing space for cultivator? Are there similar standards for other categories?
Yes.
Okay.
It's limited in size. It's limited to how much money you can make per year. It's limited in how much product you can handle in a month, like 1,000 pounds a month, 2,500 square feet.
And the micro business themselves also still have to go through the state licensing program?
Yes.
And so, once again, I think you had mentioned, let's just stick with cultivator. So someone owns 40 acres in Bedminster and, you know, they're using 30 acres of it for hay or corn or something else, and they want to set aside some land area either for a greenhouse, or is it legal to just grow it open without security measures, or is there a requirement that this either be inside or other security measures in place?
They're going to require some security measures, cameras. The town will have some option to add more security measures if you want. Like some towns that we've talked to, well, all the towns that we've talked to mentioned having the cameras do a feed directly to the police so that the police department can watch as well from where they are. So you see that as a security measure.
So I guess to Mr. Garcia's comment, to some extent, the law is, without the regulations being in place, saying this is the security measures that at a minimum need to be established, sort of forcing the towns to make some decisions about, hey, we'll allow 0 cultivator licenses, or we'll allow 20 of them, including, you know, X number of micro businesses, but we're not sure what that security measures are going to entail.
Right, and as Mr. Garcia said, the regulations aren't complete yet, they'll be complete within the 6 months. But the bill is so massive that the parameters are pretty much set. You know, there are gonna be security measures.
This is the legislation.
Yeah, it's the biggest piece of legislation that I've seen in my years there. So you can pretty much bet there's gonna be required some security measures. There's gonna be required probably an on-site security guard during business hours, that sort of thing. But towns have stepped up and wanted a little bit extra. And I would think like in a town like Bedminster, because I wouldn't expect the real estate to be cheap, and I don't think the town is very densely populated. I wouldn't expect a dispensary owner to want to open it. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for densely populated, cheap real estate to be able to maximize just from a business standpoint. But a micro business for a cultivator does make sense if people have enough land to put a barn in the backyard or a greenhouse in the backyard and grow there.
And if you, is there anything in the statute that says if you get your class 1 license, that's the license you're getting, you're also not getting class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes,
So you're only getting, so one physical location gets one license and doesn't, so you can't be a class 1 and a class 6. You can't be a grow and a dispensary.
We'll get to that. Right. And the idea was to have many small businesses instead of big conglomerates, and we're looking at a Home Depot and a CVS. So to get a bunch of small businesses, they limit the marketplace and how many different licenses you can have.
And Fuquan, the one comment I will make, and I think this is something that Mr. Garcia talked about as well, I think when he's saying, look, Bridgewater to the big town to the south of us, Chester to the north of us, Bernards to the east of us. If these towns are going to say no, the one thing that Bedminster does have, we do have a little bit of population density, but we also have the crossroads of 287, 78, 202, 206, proximity to Route 22. Certainly, as the chief can attest to, illegal drugs tended to be distributed coming right off the highways, and it would not be uncommon for our Bedminster police to make busts on the highways because people were using Bedminster to make their trades. So it may be that same reason that a retail dispensary may want to come here because of that. And I think that's certainly something that we are all sensitive to.
Well, I'm sold. I wouldn't have thought so. But now I'm like, okay.
So yeah, so I mean, we may, depending upon what we hear is, we may want to take those steps or certainly consider taking those steps. But anyway, let's.
Yes, quick question. Kind of class 1 in the micro business have people who grow this stuff talked about how, because we talked about this the other day, how long it takes to raise a crop. Can they do multiple crops in a year? And does that mean that now they should have a greenhouse because we've got cold at the top and bottom of the year? I mean, how long in Florida you grow it all the time? It doesn't really matter. But up here, I don't know if that's a kind of a rate limiting factor for the farmers up here, or.
I've heard 3 months it takes to grow a crop, at least 3 or 4 months, and that's why everyone wants to do it inside, either a greenhouse or a warehouse of some sort.
Because that could be a nice way to quiet things down if it has to be grown in a warehouse. Our smaller farmers might not want to bother putting something up.
Right.
And the security as well,
And
because,
I love security.
but at the same point, if there's money in it.
That's right away.
Yeah.
And then my thought is, how much do you make out of X amount of feet of growing this stuff? I know nothing about this stuff.
It can be significant.
Okay.
Even a micro business, I've seen business plans where 7 figures a year and 2,500 square feet. Yeah.
Wow.
It can be.
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
How much land do you have in the back?
What am I doing?
And because of the limit on the full size grows,
Yeah.
and the state regulators never wanted that limit, so they're going to grant these micro business cultivators left and right.
I was just going to
Because
ask you
if they
that.
don't, we're going to have a supply problem
So what would prevent, say I have a 100-acre farm and I want to divvy it up and create 10 LLCs and create 10 different instantiations of micro businesses? Could I do that?
It'd be difficult because you can't own more than one.
You can't
So
own more
you
than
would
one.
have to have-
But could I create, I'm just thinking if somebody's going to create it with LLCs and create separate LLCs and say, and put somebody else in charge of each LLC on paper.
Or you rent it, right, you rent out,
Right.
you get a 10-acre parcel, you get a 10-acre parcel, you get a 10-acre parcel. As the landlord, I want a
Stop
piece
giving
of,
people
I want a piece of your
ideas.
action.
They're way ahead of us.
Yeah, trust me, Renee.
Exactly like that. And clients will come in and they want to do that until
Mhm.
it's time to sign the paper saying, I'm gonna give my full interest to this person and trust them to do what we said we're gonna do. And when that happens,
Mhm.
they almost always, like they'll say, they're gonna have a priority for women-owned businesses, and someone will say, well, I'll just put my sister on. Okay, give your sister 100% of your business. You're gonna do all the work and she's gonna have it in her name, and then cooler heads
And
prevail,
stops.
you know,
Got it.
but.
Now, can we put a cap on the number of micro businesses as a
Absolutely,
municipality? Okay.
absolutely.
But there will not be a cap on micro businesses at the state level, or there will be?
They won't be.
There will be no cap, so it's really up to the town if we're going to allow any
Right.
of those categories
Mhm.
that we can then establish thresholds. I still do think it would be useful to know what those security parameters are, because that then puts you right back into zoning issues, right?
I was just
So,
gonna say, new zoning levels.
right, so
Yes.
you get into now, Fuquan, has there been discussion of how this legislation works with the Right to Farm Act?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. The farm, was it farmland assessment?
Mhm.
You can't get that.
You can't cultivate on farmland assessment.
Right, so you can't do that.
really?
It's like a
That's
horse.
interesting.
Right, so if you're getting that every year, you have to stop if you're gonna.
So if you're getting a farmland assessment, so that's one thing. So there's a couple different parameters of farmland. There's also farmland preservation, where the land is preserved and restricted from development that's not farmland related. Attorney Bellardo is certainly well aware, since we've been negotiating many of those restrictions. So in those cases, the land is generally farmland assessed, or at least assessed at a different value because of the farmland preservation. You have a preserved farm. Can you then become a cultivator on that preserved area?
I have to look at that. I haven't seen that.
Okay.
I don't think.
Because we have hundreds of acres of preserved farms, some of which are preserved under the federal program and some of which are preserved under the state program. And then within those parameters, there's often restrictions on structures. So if a structure is not farm related, you can't put that building in a preserved area. But if it is agricultural related, then it's considered okay. John, am I getting anything? I just want to make sure I'm being correct in
No.
the way the state treats farmland preservation.
You're correct. I obviously will defer to one for the parameters of farmland assessment. You seem to be suggesting farmland assessment, you can't.
Right, and from the state's perspective, I think it was all about the taxes, right? They don't want people cultivating, making $1 million a year and then not paying the full taxes.
Hmm.
So if you seek a farmland assessment, you can't
Okay.
grow. That's all.
And obviously, if a town where ban cultivation becomes a moot.
Right, or ban it on farmland preserved land, if that's what you want to do.
I don't know. It just seems to me that we've got a couple different state policies that don't necessarily line up. But that would not be the first time.
This is a state mayor.
Yes, yes.
These are the impact zones. These areas, these townships listed here are going to get priority licenses. these were essentially the hardest hit on the war on drugs. And Bedminster is not listed, so you don't really have to worry about it. Your licensees are not gonna get priority.
There's nothing close to it. What's the closest town?
Franklin.
Franklin, okay.
I used to be a township attorney there.
What happened? Oh. That's terrible. That's terrible.
So this is the time frame for the licensing. As Mr. Garcia said earlier, we have until August 21st of this year to, if we want to opt out. And the commission that is drafting the regulations also has until that day. And then within 30 days, I have to start accepting licenses, and then within 180, retail sales are able to begin. So that puts us at the latest possible date is February 2022. They will start retail sales.
The money. So this is a taxation that the state's gonna collect. They're gonna do a sales tax on retail sales, and then an excise tax on cultivators. As you can see, the amount of the tax increases as the amount of the product decreases over time. When I first saw that, I thought that was so counterintuitive. So I asked the Assembly Speaker, why did he come up with this little program that's the opposite of a progressive tax? The idea is that initially, the price is gonna be high. So you don't wanna tax people too high early on, because then they'll stay on the black market. But as people come to the legal market, there's more competition, the price will lower, and then you can charge more taxes.
So there's going to be the regular sales tax.
Yes.
So the regular state sales tax, that's it. It's going to be taxed the same as buying a pen or anything else on the sales tax. The social equity excise tax, and that's only on the cultivators?
That's only on the cultivators.
Okay.
And the sales tax is only on the retailers, so trying to tax them.
Wholesale, transport, there.
Okay, so the retail dispensary that's where the sales and use tax comes in.
Right.
And this other tax is only on the cultivators.
Right.
And is that on the average, so up to $10 per ounce if average ounce is greater than 350? So is that on the sale from the cultivator to the wholesaler?
Right, the cultivator to whoever they sell it to, the wholesaler
Or the distributor?
Or distributor or dispensary, right.
So that's certainly at the first, that's the first transaction.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the part you get. Local tax limits, 2% for cultivators, 2% for retailers, manufacturers, 1% for wholesale. Directly to you. I've seen ordinances where some towns have been aggressive with how much money they want. So the township, the town of Bayonne, for example, is charging $10,000 to $20,000 for the application, and then $20,000 to $40,000 for each yearly renewal. So in addition to that, they are actually really shaking down these companies.
And the towns under that same program, so 2%, whether it's farmland or anything else, the town can set up to the 2%,
Yes.
right? Up to the 2%, up to the 2% for manufacturer, up to 1% for wholesaler, up to 2% for the retailer.
Right.
But you said that they can also put together application fees.
Yes.
And are you also seeing other tag-ons or add-ons going with that?
Absolutely.
So
I have seen.
there could be a requirement for, you talked about cameras or additional levels of security or insurance levels. So essentially making it more and more, I guess, expensive if that's what the towns are looking to do.
The city of Trenton, for example, requires each applicant to enter into a redevelopment agreement directly with the town. And in negotiating the terms of that agreement, those types of things will be put in. We need to hire an extra cop. You're gonna pay for that. We need to hire extra whatever, you gotta pay for that. And then they just kind of negotiate that. I've actually seen clients negotiate directly with the town for specific things. Like I have a client that is a huge boxing fan, and the town he was trying to open in doesn't have a PAL boxing club. So as part of the deal, he wants to establish a PAL boxing club in the town. So you see a lot of different iterations between the town and the business owner trying to make a deal.
And is there anything that that's in the legislation that the state says you cannot touch this? I mean, certainly they've established limits for the amount of taxes that the towns can go to. Are there any other limitations on the municipality's ability to restrict or otherwise get involved in the local licensing?
No, it's not in the law. And because local approval is required, it's been all over the place with that. Maybe it gets challenged because what's the difference between $40,000 a year and tax? So someone may challenge it or just go somewhere else.
Okay.
You know, but there's nothing in the law to limit what the deal is going to be. Along the same theme, pilots are not allowed in the cannabis business, and this was to prevent towns from underbidding each other to get businesses to particular towns. So they just said it's not allowed at all.
So as we discussed, any ordinance enacted prior to February 22nd of this year is null and void. We have until August 21st to enact an ordinance. If Bedminster decides that it wants to opt out completely and not allow any licenses in the town, it has to do so before August 21st, or else it has to wait 5 years until it can opt out again. Now, on the converse, if Bedminster is good and opts out of every license before that date, it can opt in at any point. So that 5-year pause is only you cannot opt out within those 5 years, but you can opt in.
Got it. And so a couple of questions I have, and this is for Melissa Fuquan and for John. For those municipalities that are going to opt out, and are they treating the opt-out ordinances, and saying ordinances, as zoning or as public health and safety?
The ordinances that I have seen and that I have come across have all been zoning. They've been prohibited use ordinances that have been introduced at the governing body level and then under the municipal land use law, referred over to the planning board for a determination as to whether there's any inconsistency with the master plan, a referral back to the governing body for a public hearing and public comment before adoption. I just went through a couple weeks ago in Raritan Township in Raritan County on the planning board attorney. There was an ordinance that was referred over from the township committee for an inconsistency review. As noted, Melissa and I are working with Berners Township right now. They're at the same point in the process you are. They're considering their options. We made a similar presentation to staff and members there. So my recommendation would be to
Right. And just so everyone knows, the distinction, if it's a zoning ordinance, you do the referral back to the planning board. If you do it under health and safety, then it's within the police powers of the township committee to enact without any such referral. And that's essentially done.
that is the only difference.
So there's an opt-in. If you opt out, you do have the opportunity to opt in down the road. I will say one of the things that I've been thinking about is that, you know, when you see the medical or medicinal dispensaries, you look at them and you're like, really, you know, they look like head shops from, you know, the 70s and the 80s. And to some extent, this industry is still in its infancy. And just as Mr. Garcia and we heard from Melissa and Fuquan, the regulations aren't developed yet. So it is interesting because I'm not really sure what this is going to look like, as certainly in year 0 heading into year 1. I just make that as a general comment as we go through the rest of the presentation. But to me, this is an industry, the legal industry is very new. And it's to be developed, as Renee said, does it eventually look like liquor stores? Do they eventually get the same licensing that if you're selling, a bottle of vodka, you can also sell tinctures or whatever else?
Well, they're not gonna allow that.
Not yet.
Very strict. You can't even sell potato chips in a dispensary.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think we're going to see an evolution.
Right.
As we go through year 1, we go through year 2, we go through year 3, either the politics are going to swing that this is so accepted that it's going to be, go to your liquor store, it's a regulated location. It says liquor stores are regulated, they're licensed. They're inspected by the police, when they go for their license renewals. Who knows? To me, I think this industry is going to change. I think the 250 pages that Melissa is carrying, they're going to be replaced by 800 pages down the road.
This doesn't even include the regulations. This is
Right.
statutes.
And the regs aren't out yet,
That's
right?
right.
So they're going to be much more detailed when they come out.
And what's your sense in terms of how long will that take to fully bake this thing? Is it 12 months, 24 months, 36 months? Just
12 months.
12 months?
The state has 6 months to do the regulations, from what I'm hearing, they can do it sooner than that.
Okay.
It won't take that long. They already have the regulations for the medical program. There are regulations in 5 or 6 other states that they're taking from, so it can move pretty quickly.
But even then, we're being asked to make a decision by, what is it, August 21st? So they're going to finish up the regulations right around that time.
Yeah, or maybe sooner. Right.
But-
Doing nothing is the worst.
No,
Yeah, right.
absolutely.
Right.
No question. I'm just
Right.
saying,
And then think about, if you look at that August 21st deadline, right?
Right.
So that's a Saturday. So we have township meetings 1st and
Right.
3rd
right.
Mondays. So if you're going to treat it as a zoning ordinance, right? So you got to make the referral back to the land use
Yep.
board. So barring having special hearings or special meetings, you're going to have something prepared, I'm going to say by June.
I was just going to say, right.
And
So, and
it's-
the regulations are still at that
Yeah,
point. not
right.
even-
So the regulations will not be in place.
Right.
No, not right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Preparation of the ordinance is not going to be a heavy lift.
correct.
These are ordinances that you said, put something together, we would turn it around.
And so you have certainly the option of looking at each of those licenses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got it.
And this is exactly what we're talking about. You could be specific. You can handle this with a scalpel. What do they call it?
Scalpel.
Scalpel. You can designate what types of licenses you like, what types you don't like, how many, where, what time they can be open, extra security measures, pretty much anything you want, so that people know.
So the statute imposes a civil penalty for public smoking, vaping, and what's called aerosolizing, but does not prohibit consumption by other means. So if Bedminster wants to prohibit all manner of consuming cannabis, that'll be something that will have to be included in the ordinance. And the statute permits Bedminster to enact a civil penalty of up to $200 for any violation of the public consumption ban.
And this is recreational only as opposed to medicinal uses. Is that correct? Or is it everything in terms of public consumption?
I don't think the statute makes a difference.
No, it's,
Okay.
If you don't allow smoking, you don't have to allow smoking.
Bedminster may prohibit public consumption by means other than smoking. So,
So this public smoking is already prohibited by the statute. You
Okay.
can't do that anywhere in the state. But taking an edible in public is not prohibited by the statute. So if Bedminster wants to prohibit public consumption by all means, that's something that will have to be done by ordinance.
but practically, I would imagine that's a pretty hard, was that gummy, was that a Flintstone? Is that a Flintstone vitamin? Or is that something
What's
else?
in the brownie that somebody thinks?
It'd be impossible. I have something in here.
Right,
How do
exactly.
you know? There's no way.
Right.
Enforcement is different, but you also have the opportunity for a $200 civil penalty. Again, it's not criminal. Marijuana's been decriminalized.
So the public consumption is a civil penalty, not a criminal penalty.
Correct.
Smoking in public is criminal or civil?
Chief, that's civil, isn't it? You can't go to jail for smoking.
Usually those are under the,
So if someone is smoking on one of our parks or near a playground or on the hike and bike trail, public, right? So it's out and certainly out in the public. That would be prohibited by the state law. But we don't know if that's a criminal or civil penalty.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a civil penalty. Smoking in public.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
look, the whole overall point of legislation is to essentially, is supposed to be criminalized, you're not gonna criminal penalties.
Right, or a cigarette for that matter. But you could enact a statute, having penalties for edibles. It would be hard to enforce, but maybe sometimes you could, if you saw a bunch of kids at the party. Could confiscate and then find out what it was. Awesome.
Just can't tell their parents.
No, they changed
changed
that.
I just,
People jump.
I'm just
streets.
lobbing a grenade in the room.
And, maybe we should talk about this earlier, but what's the status of the legislation for grow your own?
It hadn't moved yet, like this big debate, but New York passed their statute and they do allow it. There's been a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so I saw that it would allow up to 6 plants at any one time so that anyone could then grow their own. So rather than a legal question, I'm just going to ask a business question. If that law takes place in New Jersey, does that undermine some of these licensing?
I think so.
I've had this debate in my office with our own cannabis team, and I say it will for sure.
Sure, and the enforcement of that would be difficult. So 6 plants or less. So who's to stop someone from growing 12 plants?
Right.
Chief's gonna have to go in the house and count the number of plants and all that. And then it gets to be, and then what do you do with the extra 6? Are you gonna sell it to someone? So that's why the state of New Jersey has thus far decided not to allow home grow.
And then how do
There's a lot of pressure.
you buy plants?
You get the seeds. And
Do you go to buy the seeds? Do you go to a class 1 license, class 2 license? I mean,
you would hope that's where they go and they don't just order it on the internet, right? I think you could do that right now today.
But someone's got to have the first seeds. Where do they get them?
Gotta get them from somewhere.
Yeah.
California, probably.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dr. Agathis. Are we allowed to ask questions, or I don't know what the formality?
well, I don't think we really have a formality. So Dr. Agathis, if you're ready to jump in, I mean, I know there's still a few more pages left to go, but if you've got a question that's,
Yeah, I have a question regarding what you mentioned about smoking, because initially when vaping was initiated, they felt that it was safe and that because it didn't elicit smoke, that it was okay. And now we know that you can't vape around small children or pets. So what is the rule in terms of vaping legally relative to smoking? Because you're talking about smoking, and I think most people will be vaping. DAP pens are vaping.
With regard to cannabis or tobacco?
With regard to either one, but cannabis in particular, since that's what we're talking about, right? Legally, we're not that concerned because smoking is already prohibited in public places. But now we're talking about cannabis vaping in public places. I wonder if the law has caught up with vaping as smoking, or is it a separate entity? Because that's my concern.
The statute says mostly smoking / vaping / aerosolizing. So as I read it, it treats it all as one activity.
So that's still, it's still a criminal, I'm sorry, a civil penalty for smoking, vaping, or any other aerosolizing of cannabis or marijuana.
Okay, so we're just talking about oral consumption then in terms of legalizing or not legalizing, because the top of your slide under civil penalty says that Bedminster may prohibit public consumption by means other than smoking. So you're considering vaping as smoking, or do we not have the right to change that? Does that smoking include vaping also?
Correct. They're already prohibited by the statute in public is smoking, vaping, and aerosolizing. In private, in your own home, you can do whatever you want. But by the statute, the state has prohibited smoking and vaping and aerosolizing.
And what about driving after you do whatever you want in your own home?
You're not allowed to drive while intoxicated.
For how long?
Well,
Have they determined how long you're intoxicated from vaping? And what, and in marijuana consumption in the legislative aspect of that? Like, we know what the half-life of alcohol is in the bloodstream, right? There's no roadside testing for marijuana, and we are a state of highways. We're the intersection of 287 and 78. Like, what have we given that any consideration?
there is no test yet.
Right, I know. There's a urine test, but that can pick up marijuana use up to 30 days, depending on if you're a chronic user or not. Believe me, I'm the doctor for 5 schools, including Bernardsville High School. I look at, they go for drug testing under my prescriptions. So I see every drug test that comes out of there.
For those who don't know, Dr. Agathis is not just the doctor for 5 schools, as she mentioned, but she is also the town doctor and is on our Board of Health. So she speaks with very in-depth knowledge.
Yeah, I have a lot of concerns about this. I mean, I won't get into the social aspect or the, whether we're going to debate, the issue of marijuana in general legalization. But I just have, I think we have to be responsible. And I'm very concerned that, states like Colorado that have seen increase in traffic accidents and they still don't have any roadside testing. There's right now that doesn't exist from a pharmacological point of view. And as I said, the marijuana, depending on if you're a chronic user or not, can pick up urine testing can pick up marijuana use for 30 days. So, and it's not practical to do a urine test at the roadside anyway. So I have a lot of concerns about this, but I just want to make sure that we do whatever we can do to make sure that our parks are safe, that people are not going to be leaving edibles around, that children are not going to be picking up pieces of brownies and things like that and consuming them.
Understood. Now, while the legislation passed overwhelmingly by the population, there were still 1.3 million people that voted against it. So everyone doesn't agree. I'm also on the executive committee of the New Jersey American Academy of Pediatrics and the New Jersey American Pediatric School Health Committee. And I think that we did a very poor job as an organization educating people. I think they jumped on the bandwagon too late to get people mobilized to understand what the risks were. And that's unfortunate, but that's on the NJAAP. That's not anybody else's fault.
No, and Dr. Agathis, when I mentioned that I view this industry in its infancy, to some extent, I've had these conversations with the chief. I've had email exchanges with Prosecutor Robertson on this very issue, which is the science, the DUI science and the DUI testing is not on par with the legalization process. So there clearly is a disparity between the movement to legalize consumption, but at the same time protecting, the public out on the roads. And, I sympathize for the police because, we were talking, you're driving in your car and you can be smoking it in plain sight.
Well, you're not supposed to be, but
No, actually, Chief, what's, if someone sees someone smoking marijuana in their car?
My understanding is that, so this is something different, but the possession of marijuana in a motor vehicle is no longer a motor vehicle offense. And if you're driving down the road, as long as you're not intoxicated, I don't see a motor vehicle statute that says you cannot smoke marijuana in a vehicle. Compared to alcohol, yes, there's a statute that says you shall not have an open container in a vehicle. It all comes down to operation and impairment. So if you're one of those people that smokes marijuana and, have a high tolerance, you might be able to operate a car.
I will look into that. I do not believe you are allowed to smoke while driving, either the driver or the passenger. I will double check that and get John. Inform you. But I do believe that's not allowed. You can't smoke while you're in the car, or the passenger either, for obvious reasons. But the concerns are well known that you can't, there's no test like the blood alcohol test. It's like, it joins the list of legal substances that can impair you so bad that it makes it difficult for you to drive. I'm sure it's a long list of different things you can take that are legal that can impair you. And it gives the officers a more difficult job. They are going to give you some money to have drug recognition training officers. They are trying to help do that, but personally, I don't know how effective.
Right. Right. And I think the police probably share that sentiment as well.
Sure. So I don't envy you for that. It's got to be difficult, whether it's a Ambien or Oxycontin or no sleep, you got an infant in the house. Like, it could be a lot of things that can make it difficult for you to drive. And it's going to be difficult.
And from a public health and safety perspective, is there any regulation with respect to, you're growing the plants, what pesticides you're putting on it, because it's a federally banned substance, right? So there is no FDA oversight on any of this, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. They're very strict on that. I think no pesticides when you're doing home grow, that's a different thing. And that's one of the reasons why the state of New Jersey does not allow that.
Right. But I'm saying for this,
getting a license, there are going to be limits on.
There's environmental impact statements.
but for a cultivator, what's to stop me from using a pesticide on the plant? Because the feds ban it, right? So there are no FDA regulations that I'm aware of.
The state's going to limit it. I think the state may allow no pesticides at all.
Okay, so
and people in the industry are trying to push back, but they don't want pesticides.
Right, you would think, but again, it's federally banned substance, so there is no real rule there right now, which is scary in and of itself.
So the USDA doesn't establish a standard for this is acceptable fertilizer, pesticide, or anything else along those lines.
Right,
exactly.
So the state's going to have to do it, and it may be different than what they're doing in New York. It may be different from what they're doing in Colorado, et cetera.
But we won't know that for 6 or 8 months.
Are there regulations regarding pesticide use in saleable vegetables? Like we have the that park in the all summer, the farmers market. We don't regulate pesticides. I think that there's some assumption of risk, right? When you purchase things from a source unknown to you, isn't it the vendor who has to advertise whether or not they use pesticides or not? So if you're smoking marijuana, that's on you.
Correct, but I would say the distinction is, I think what Colin was getting at is the USDA establishes acceptable limits for different types of crops. And if you're organic, then you're not doing any additives.
Right.
But if you have a new product that the USDA or FDA has not said, this is an acceptable level of
Whatever.
additive X, then there is no, it is complete buyer beware.
What about the people that are purchasing medical marijuana from dispensaries?
That's what I was,
There must be some regulation as to what can be used.
they don't allow pesticides.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's gonna come. That's, I think that that's like less of a concern to me than some of the other issues that we've raised tonight.
Not permitted to be sold as of yet.
Farmers markets?
Not yet.
A long way to go before we get there.
Not that we know of. Whether it's being sold there or not, that's for the chief to investigate.
Oh, this slide just reiterates how much involvement municipalities have in determining who gets the license and who doesn't. So if the state gets a license and the address is Bedminster, they have 14 days to let you know. And you can thumbs up or thumbs down.
So there's a thumbs up, thumbs down on that?
Yeah.
And what's, is there a standard for what, yeah, I mean, what sort of legal standard is there for the town to say, we like this one, we don't like that one?
Well, if you set a limit, you say we're not gonna allow more than 2 micro cultivators and the state gets 4 of them, then you get to say, you get some selection.
Now, I seem to recall when I was working with you on one, there are administrative code regs in an application that requires a licensee to indicate whether there's been town approval. That exists even before this.
Yes. That's correct.
Mentioned this earlier, Fuqua mentioned this earlier, Bedminster can seek reimbursement from the state on any money spent for a drug sniffing dog, or if the police get special training on detecting intoxication for marijuana use.
But for the drug sniffing dog, what are you, what, it's not, is that a crime, or are you going for something greater than the 8 ounces, or it's 6, I'm sorry, 6 ounces, right?
Yes.
So dog would, okay.
I think the drug recognition training is more geared toward the driving and being able to tell the difference between someone that has smoked marijuana and someone that has an infant in the house and sleeping. So I'm curious to see how the studies turn out. Who can tell the difference between the two?
You always
Someone's
tell the
gonna have
difference when you watch those Cheech and completely filled with.
Can I go back real quick to class 1 and 2? Taking into consideration this, what we just did, is the manufacturer going to have to purchase from a licensed cultivator?
Yes.
And that's the only way
Yes.
he can get it?
Yes.
Is there a way to track that? Because I could see somebody growing this stuff out in the middle of nowhere, and then they sell it to our manufacturer, and then they get it in the system.
The state's gonna have a detailed tracking system. They want to track from seed to sale, they say. So a barcode, I don't know how they're gonna do it, but it's essential that there's no diversion from the black market. or
With all
out of
the
state.
tax on the line, there's no chance that happens. The state's gonna know exactly what's going everywhere, so they can tax it.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think Renee's point is, just as the state is motivated, you're gonna find cultivators and distributors who are motivated to get the cheapest product they can.
Because the manufacturer won't, unless they've got some punitive thing going on, they don't necessarily care about the taxes that got missed by the cultivator.
Manufacturer's gonna report back, they have X numbers of pounds that they're working with, and then they're gonna look back at the cultivator and say, well, there's only Y ounces of pounds that were sold. What's the difference? Where did you get the difference from?
Right.
No one's gonna, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and there's gonna, the games are gonna be played across the lot here.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's something that we can do anything about.
Right, and the risk is so big to lose your license after working so hard, so
Well-
competitive, and you get caught getting some stuff that you weren't supposed to get, and you lose millions of dollars a year. I think it'll be less attempts.
And, I hear you, but at the same time, and I hear Doug as well, but, I mean, I think, something as mundane as oyster beds, right? So you've got areas where you've got permitted oyster beds, and you can cultivate and put those into market. but you know that there are other oyster beds that are off limits, or you're not, there are no grow or no shellfish growing area, and you hear the stories of those entering into commerce all the time. In my own industry is environmental law, right? So seed to sale, cradle to grave, with tracking hazardous waste and making sure it goes, it becomes a waste product here, and this is how it gets disposed of, and you track the chain of custody from step one, and it works. But you always hear the story about someone who cut the line, and if the money is there,
Someone's cutting the line.
if the money is there, the black market will take it up.
That's where,
for
I
sure.
think that's the answer. I think if someone's gonna cut the corner, you're gonna see it being sold off on the black market.
Right.
Why would they put it into the system?
And if the taxes become so great, then all you've done is you've engendered a black market, at the same time decriminalizing the possession.
Right.
So if you're carrying 6 ounces of weed, you don't have to say, I got it from here, here's my receipt from a licensed dispensary. You got 6 ounces of weed, nothing that the chief can do about it.
The problem is that, in the last few years, we've seen a lot of kids at our own high school sent to the emergency room with, contaminants in the marijuana. So it's not only the marijuana, right? As a dealer, I want you to buy from me. I don't want you to buy from Carl. I want you to buy from me because my high is better. And, you wind up getting propofol, fentanyl, like all other contaminants. So I think that there needs to be an educational component along with this, that you need to know what you're buying. And, now that it's legalized, I think there'll be a lot of kind of, I don't know, black market, but gray market sales from people who are growing it saying my high is better. And, I think there's a lot of questions here, more than just pesticides.
Oh, and Dr. Agathis, there's, look, just from folks I know that have, used medicinal marijuana, is the strengths are all over the place.
Correct.
Like,
And, the strength of the THC component versus the strength of the CBD component. And, I think that people just, people who are social users, and I was shocked as a parent of 6 kids, raising them at, the schools around here. My kids were private school kids, but parents at, one of the local country day schools, like going to someone's house and parents passing around joints. And that was, 20 years ago. I can't imagine what's going to happen if, there's just so many questions involved in educating both users and children. I wish that they would give us more money. Forget the drug sniffing dogs. That smell's going to be on your clothes for weeks, if you don't wash it. So I wish there was some educational funds that we could use.
I think you're right. And I've heard that argument a lot from the pro-cannabis lobby, when you say, why would people leave the black market just to pay an extra 20% to go in the legal market? And you hear that same argument that was just made. The reason why you would go into a store is because it's not going to have fentanyl in it, it's not going to have pesticides in it. So that has been a part of the movement to legalize, so that would happen a lot less, because it has a lot more control if it has to go through the whole process.
Let's face it, I mean, a lot of this is gonna fall on parents. Parents are gonna have to step up and parent and actually talk to their kids and tell them what's right and wrong. I mean, there's gonna have to be an emphasis on that. I don't think that should be lost on anybody here.
I agree 100% with the education component, but I had a question regarding the consumption area endorsement or the public use or public smoking. A majority of the people that live in Bedminster live in condos, and you can smoke on your front porch, I'm assuming, because people smoke cigarettes and vape on their front porch. And if the person next door to you, because basically you share a patio, it's tight spaces and their windows open and their child has asthma, and or their 3-month-old is getting high because you're smoking on your your patio, I mean, does that fall on the homeowners association to make determination about that, or the town? Because you know people are going to be coming to us about that. So I just want to kind of a little bit of clarification about what the consumption area endorsement is, and also as far as like public areas, but what if you're at home but you're in shared spaces?
Okay, so two things. First of all, the answer is yes, the condo association will be allowed to prohibit consumption on the property.
Okay.
So will a landlord that has more than 4 units, I think.
Okay.
So federal housing. So it's kind of interesting that that dynamic is what created the necessity for consumption area possibility, because a lot of people live in these condos associations or apartment buildings and they won't be able to participate. So a lot of the legislators that have a lot of these constituents wouldn't sign the bill unless those people are also allowed to participate in this new freedom. So
Okay, so wait, I'm sorry. So homeowners associations could prohibit the use of marijuana outside on their property. So that is what made this consumption area endorsement, which created this, a need for this, right? So
necessary because people that live in apartments wouldn't be able to participate in this latest freedom. So people said, well, that's not fair. So consumption of the lounges became a necessity, but the towns are allowed to say no to that.
Okay, that was my question.
Say yes to retail, no to consumption areas, no to both, yes to both.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
And Dr. Agatha, does it sound like you had a question before?
This has come up as an issue before in front of the Board of Health regarding complaints to the health department regarding odors in the hills. So people who have garbage or people who do something unpleasant on their patio and things like that. This has been brought up. And I think if I remember correctly, what Tim Beck said, the attorney, was that there is no environmental like regulation about what you can and can't smell, you know, relative to your neighbor. So I'm not sure how this fits in, but that's been our experience in the past with the Somerset County Board of Health and the inspections.
So is this for the chief?
No, I think that's correct. You know, we've had this issue in Berners Township. Lucy Forgione is the Board of Health Director, and we often get complaints about odors, whether it be someone with 20 cats on their property with cat urine. And in general, the Board of Health will not get involved unless there is a risk of vermin or something else that would cause a public health issue to the surrounding residents. So I think what it comes down to, just like, you know, people that might smoke cigarettes on their terrace in the hills, if the neighbor doesn't like it, I think a lot of times it's just a matter of neighbors talking with each other and saying, hey, you know, that bothers me, can you take it away from your patio? But homeowners associations, as Juan said, and could they ban it not only on patios, but also inside the physical structures of the condominium or townhome?
That is correct.
So that's going to be something that the HOAs are going to have to decide whether they want to do or not to do. That will be outside the strictures or governance of the township committee at that level.
So just to be clear, condominium associations can restrict consumption, well, smoking, vaping, aerosolizing in outside, so on the patios and inside.
Yes.
Will those condos?
Is that for single family homes or just the condo?
Just for condos, apartments of more than 4 people, trailer parks, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So landlords can decide. Hotels can decide.
Can the landlords also restrict on non-aerosolizing ingestion? So tinctures or edibles?
I think that might be more difficult.
That is something I think will put as an action item to follow up on, since there
Right.
seems to be a lot of interest expressed at the meeting. Obviously, we have a lot of condos and townhomes, so we'll follow up on that one as well as an action item.
Right, my gut is telling me no.
Yeah, I would
You
think
can't
so
tell
too.
People, they can't have a.
Yeah, I would think that's
doesn't affect-
contrary to the policy of the legislation in the first place.
Right, but the smell of marijuana
Right.
or a cigar, how strong that smell could be.
Right.
I can understand the condo administration, which does have power. But,
We'll do that along with the criminal versus civil penalty, although we do believe it's.
yes,
And in the car,
and in the car.
smoking in the car.
And then how does this square with schools? Are they automatically carved out? I'm thinking like the drug-free zones, or is that something else that has to be prohibited?
You can't smoke on school property.
Right.
But how about consumption in terms of gummies, brownies?
You have to be a certain.
Well, you gotta be 21,
Right.
or have a medical card, because you have sick children that have a prescription to consume. You
Got it.
can't stop them from taking medicine.
Right, no,
But you
no,
can't-
right.
You have to be 21.
Got it.
And college.
That's going to be an issue with the children, like with the seizure disorders and things like that, that need the medicine for various medical complaints. That's going to be an issue legally for the state to deal with, because right now the nurse gives the medicine only. And if they have to take marijuana, then the parent needs to come in from home. So that's something that's going to have to be dealt with on the state level, I think.
Is there any restriction on locating dispensaries within a certain distance of schools?
Yes.
Okay.
And the towns have stepped up and increased the amount they like. And college campuses is not allowed as well.
What about public parks and playgrounds?
As we said before, the smoking and aerosolizing, and you can also pass an ordinance not allowing consumption of any type on the public property.
So Bedminster will have to prepare a quarterly report if there are any, or even if there are not any, arrests for either distribution under 1 ounce or possession of more than 6 ounces. The report has to be pretty detailed on the people or persons that were arrested. The goal is really to make this decriminalized. So the goal is to have 0 arrests.
And to blast you if you're pulling people over, you know what this is about. So there's gonna be reports and someone's gonna say, who arrested more Black people than live in the community? And then there's gonna be in the cover of the paper and they'll be listed. That's what that's all about, to shame you into not arresting people.
So distribution is still, so unlicensed distribution is not, I'm going to not use the term illegal, is not allowed. So selling without a license is prohibited, subject to some type of penalty. I don't know what that is. And possessing more than 6 ounces is also prohibited under the legislation. Just not sure if is that a crime or is that a civil penalty?
It is a crime.
So
the
if you've got
sections
7
of-
ounces, 8 ounces,
Right, the sections of the statute that talk about these crimes were not changed.
okay,
So the section of the statute that talks about distributing 5 pounds or more of cannabis was not changed.
okay,
So if you do that without a license, you're still gonna, for now, like I said.
right.
Policy.
So if you're growing your own, you got the 6 plants, you can't give your buddy any, right?
And that's the
You don't
problem.
That would be
you don't-
distribution.
You don't allowed to have your 6 plants.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Right, that's why, because of that problem. You're gonna grow 12 and sell the other 6.
But you can make a couple
I
of joints and
think
then
that's
share
gonna
them
happen.
over a
I
couple
think
of
they're
beers
gonna have to
and
grow-
they can't touch you.
You know, if you're really gonna if you're really gonna go to the effort
Exactly.
of legalizing it, you gotta legalize it. Well, that's my thought, instead of, propping up an industry.
So now the burnt smell of cannabis is no longer reasonable suspicion. You can't stop someone in the park because they smell like weed. First time arrest for intent to distribute is really just a written warning. There's a lot of slaps on the wrist for any violations of the statute until it becomes the possession of over 6 ounces or something that's.
You see that in the 2 intent to distribute a small amount. So the reason they have that is because these large distributors that happen on the black market still want to arrest them.
Right.
So this has changed recently, but all of this is still valid. The legal age of consumption is 21, just like alcohol. Anyone under the age of 21 is not capable of consenting to a search. Still, the smell is not reasonable suspicion, and any record of a violation of the statute gets destroyed or deleted after 2 years of the date.
So police officer, there's kids smoking in a park. Clearly under 21. But that does not give rise to, does that give rise to a stop?
If they're smoking and you see them smoking,
Yes.
then it's in plain sight. So
So
that you can stop.
you can stop
But
them.
you can't, but if they don't have anything and they put it away and they put it in their clothes or what have you, they don't have the ability to consent to a search, so they can say no.
They can get sent to war.
Yeah, Mom.
They can't
I mean,
consent
it's
to a
just,
search.
this is,
I'm sorry,
this is
horrible.
very, yeah, this is, makes it tough to police.
It's a sea change in the way we are looking at cannabis use in the state. Simple as that. Decriminalize it, legalize it.
Unconcealed possession observed in plain sight does not constitute probable cause to initiate a search to determine further
We have something
violations.
different than what Melissa
I
has.
deleted some of it because it's just a lot on the slide.
Oh,
There's
okay.
more- You guys have more detail.
Oh, okay.
There's the 250 pages. We try to make it a little more readable.
So the
Okay.
unconcealed possession in plain sight does not constitute probable cause. So even if it's underage, so this is under treatment of underage users. So the unconcealed possession, you can do a stop, but you can't initiate a search.
So you can see that they have a joint, you can give them a written warning for the joint, but you can't see if they have any other cannabis on their possession.
And they can't be arrested, detained, or taken into custody. So I come back to
What's the
this.
point?
If it's, yeah, so if
Sorry.
if it is still
Well, we can go to the
prohibited.
next.
Okay, so there's a penalty. Who's giving the penalty? So they've got to they can be stopped, but do they give their name? Can they be compelled to give their name and address?
We have to, how else you gonna get the ticket,
Right.
right?
Chief, what are
The
you?
county prosecutor told you. Here's a question, and we've talked about this, and I think you even mentioned it at a prior meeting, the question was, can you compel a minor that you observe smoking if you're going to give his or her neighbors? I think you said that they simply just, maybe actually I'm using it. Shipsky said they could just say, hey, my name's Mickey Mouse or Dumbo.
Sure. I said on face value. Shouldn't give them a warning. Now we can at least send a warning or deliver a warning to the address on file that we get.
What Committeeman Stevenson said is, parents, that's your police enforcement mechanism. You come home at midnight and you're reeking of weed, parents are gonna have to step up, and that's traditionally been the way it's done. Where you going, who you hanging out with? Why do you need to go out at 8 o'clock at night and walk around the park with your,
It's time to parent.
yeah. I mean, just something you can't police. Same with alcohol. It's always been that way.
Yeah, in an ideal world, except there's plenty of parents that buy alcohol for their underage kids and weed as well. So, I mean, I think the education component of what could be contaminated in your weed is even more important. I'm comparing this to if you were to see a child, an underage, apparently under 21-year-old drinking with a bottle out in the park. Like compared to that, what is the difference between the marijuana and the underage drinking, like in public?
Comparing what to what?
Alcohol.
Comparing drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana in public.
The incidents or the
Penalty, the penalty or the actions taken as far as the offense goes. First offense, second offense, third offense. Is it similar? Is it the same? Is it different?
It's not broken up into warnings. And it also doesn't have the breakdown from 18 to 21 to under 18. I'm pretty sure it was a $250 fine for under 21.
Alcohol.
I think the statute just says it's a $250 fine. And the municipality can also impose community service if they would like, but.
Okay.
So it's treated differently.
So alcohol is more severe, the penalty.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what happens to parents who have parties and allow teenagers to use marijuana in their home if they're not over 21? Like, there's no law in the state, I believe, that does not allow you to serve alcohol to a minor in your home. It just is illegal to sell alcohol to a minor in your home because of religious ceremonies and things like that. So what happens to parents who have, the parents who take the keys and have the supervised drinking parties in the basement and now switch to pot?
You can charge an adult or a parent for supplying alcohol to a minor. You have to identify exactly where they got it from.
There's also civil liability
Right, the civil liability aspect I understand, and that's what keeps parents from doing it. But I think Kevin Valentine in Bernardsville explained to me once relative to a party that involved other people, that there is no law prohibiting serving alcohol to a minor in your home. So I'm just extrapolating this marijuana issue to those supervised drinking parties, civil litigation aside, if there's an untoward event.
Couldn't that be endangering the welfare of a child if you have a party and people are over consuming whatever it
Right,
is?
but if you're a parent or guardian in that situation as well, you can allow your underage person to consume it. It comes down to, providing alcohol to a minor. I don't understand off the top of my head, but it's on the book.
So Dr. Aga, sounds like Chief Rock is questioning.
Yeah, maybe it's different now. I don't know. This was a few years ago, so maybe it's different. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer and I'm certainly not a police officer, but I just I have a lot of concerns about this. And I think the basis of it's by Kevin Valentine to me a few years ago, that's town ordinance. And that in this particular situation, Bernardsville did have an ordinance that you were not allowed to serve alcohol to minors in your home. I don't know what Bedminster's ordinance is, but that was not state law because of religious ceremonies, that involve taking drinks of alcohol at religious events in your home. So I was just wondering but I'll go back and ask him again. And I'll ask Tim Beck also. He's our Board of Health attorney. I'm just curious, now that we're throwing in another.
I am not a municipal prosecutor. You have a different municipal prosecutor here. I've never been a municipal prosecutor. So in terms of those particular types of penalties for those violations, that's something that's beyond my immediate area of expertise.
So I guess the question to Melissa and Fouquan is adults providing marijuana products to underage, that is criminal penalty or civil penalty?
It's on our to-do list.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's criminal.
We'll,
To provide-
we'll make a note.
Or to sell, whether you're in a shop and you don't card the person and you give it to underage, there's the violations for that as well. But I'll get back to you on what
Okay.
the civil.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, so let's go through Township Committee and Dr. Agathis for additional questions and comments, and then we'll open it up for to the public. Doug?
No, all my questions are answered. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was
I'm
very,
good for
very
right now. I'm
informative.
sure I'll come up with some as we go
Same.
along the process.
Colin?
But
Gina?
thank you, guys.
I just want clarification, as far as what we're responsible for as a township. The township determines the number of micro businesses in each area, such as cultivator, manufacturer, wholesaler, distributor. If, is that the township, is that what we're deciding?
Yes, you're able to decide whether that number is 1, 2, or 0 in terms of what type of license you will allow.
Okay. That was all.
Okay, Robin, so we'll open it up to public comment. So once again, if you are participating by Zoom, go to the bottom of the screen, bring your cursor to participants, click on raise hand, and you will be in queue, and Ms. Ray will call you. And if you're participating by phone, *9, and you'll be identified as having a question or comment to raise.
Mr. Garcia has a question.
Mr. Garcia, take yourself off mute, please.
Okay, great. First of all, thanks for the presentation. It was very informative. I appreciate it. Thank you. The question I have is for the copy of the presentation, can we get one? Is there access to it so I can go at my own pace to read through materials instead of coming back to looking at the committee video?
Melissa, if you want to email it to us and we'll put it up on the website. Okay.
Great.
So, Mr. Garcia, the attorneys from McElroy Deutsch they will email us a copy of the PowerPoint and we will have it on the website within a day or two.
Great. My next question is, I had a concern about, let's say outside of the shopping malls like King Shopping Center or, Fresh Mark or whatever, how is that outside smoking? How is that covered? Is that something that property management takes care of, or is that still considered public? Not sure.
Allowed outside those properties anyway, right?
Parking lots.
So it's not public property, it's private property, but it certainly is public.
If, for example, someone decides they're going to smoke outside of Felicia's Heights. That's the question.
Well, yeah, I think Mr. Garcia said the King Shopping Center or King's parking lot, but yeah, any,
Well, more likely happen, I would think, at a more town, but that's something.
Yeah, I don't really think I have an answer to it.
Yeah, that actually came up. Melissa and I were in Burns Township, and the question came up similar. What if somebody in the parking lot at Washington House, instead of going outside to smoke a cigarette, they go outside to smoke a joint? The question was, would the town ban that at a local level? And I think your answer is that yeah. Yeah, it might be that that's something that the business would have to ban as opposed to the town being able to do that.
so I guess let me ask the chief a question. Have you ever been called to any of the shopping center parking lots or any of the parking lots by the proprietors or the landlord saying, hey, we've got someone doing something we don't want here, come on down.
Yes. I think the public law regards smoking, you have to be 25 feet away from the entrance, so from the building or 8. Right, so you can't be smoking on the overhang or the fresh carpet. Not sure that it's still allowed, it's marijuana. It's like,
Mr. Garcia, were you able to hear the chief?
No. If you could repeat that louder.
Sure, so right now, I believe under the health rules or something, where the enforcement of smoking cigarettes, tobacco products outside a public entrance is, prohibited. So in regulation to the marijuana, I'm sure it's gonna file suit that you can't be standing out where, the public could be contaminated by it. But I have not read anything either.
So could this be something written into an ordinance or somehow
It's
dealt
already,
with?
already state law. Smoking
The
and
question is whether being on a private property, like outside a restaurant, but on the restaurant property, especially now all those outdoor eateries, can you smoke on that outdoor eatery because it's that public?
I'm sure there must be a legal precedent for, like open water, right? At some point, the shore and a certain amount of mileage of the ocean belongs to the country adjacent to it. And then at some point you're in open water. I'm sure that there's some legal precedent. I mean, you guys obviously know better than me, how much around a restaurant is considered their personal property and how much is open water, to do. You may have to walk 50 feet to do it, but there must be some precedent set for that.
if they're open to the public, isn't it? I mean, I'm going to like ADA and law against discrimination. If you don't have access to your restaurant with wheelchair capability, you can be sued for that, right? I mean, you're a public place of accommodation. So I don't know. I mean, isn't it?
We'll look into that. That's something that I said was asked in another time.
Okay, so you'll be looking into it. It's just a concern because, you got families, you got kids and in the parking lots, and if people start smoking out there, you got to walk through it. It's a concern. I had one more question in relation to HOAs and condo associations. In restricting smoking, vaping, aerosolization outside the units that HOAs and condo associations can enact regulations. I wanted to make sure there was no time constraints in that, in the sense of what the township has to do by August 21st.
I want to do on that, Mr. Garcia, so that we're absolutely clear and absolutely correct. We're going to go back and look at those express provisions because I don't want to give out any information tonight. It might be otherwise ambiguous or mislead someone. So that is something that we're going to follow up on. So our advice is 100% correct and clear.
So you'll be looking into it. I had a hard time hearing you.
We're going to look into it because I said we want to be clear on that, and we don't want to otherwise mislead. So that is one of the items, along with 4 or 5 others that were mentioned tonight that we're going to follow up on.
But Mr. Garcia, so one of the things that Mr. Bellardo is going to look into is what the provisions in the cannabis legislation apply. If there are abilities for the HOA or the condo associations to impose restrictions, those would most likely have to come from the condominium associations and not from the municipality. The township committee cannot say, if you live in, we cannot give rules or dictate rules to the associations.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because, I attend the Master Association, Hills Village North Master Association on a monthly basis. And it would be nice to share with them because we have representation from 6 neighborhoods on what they could look forward to doing to enact these these condo rules or HOA rules. But sounds like we need further investigation on that.
So, yeah, so first we need to see, is there anything in the marijuana legislation itself? And then certainly it's something that perhaps each neighborhood association, as well as the master associations, may need to consider themselves on their own.
They have counsel as well that represent the HOAs and master associations, and I'm sure their counsel are going to be well versed in what they can and cannot prohibit.
Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia.
We have Jim and Kathy Christie.
Jim and Kathy Christie, please unmute. Name and address.
Name and address. Jim, well, Jim and Kathy's here too, but Jim's speaking, and in Bedminster. Longtime resident, as you well know. Thank you for a great presentation. Really was eye-opening. And my concern and our concern is that there seems to be a whole lot that has not really been fleshed out yet. And this township committee has 180 days to decide to opt in or opt out. Based on what I heard and my concerns about what other towns around us may do, and and our intersection of 287 and 78 and 206, I would urge the township committee at this point to opt out of everything, because you've always got the ability to opt back in on certain things, but to take a very, very cautious approach. I speak as someone who was a caregiver for two people who were under who took medical marijuana. So I've experience in visiting the dispensaries, going through the process of obtaining medical marijuana. And it's a very, very convoluted, and while you see a great deal of security and cameras and armed guards, there's also a lot of very loose and unclear activity in terms of what's dispensed, how it's dispensed, what choices you have. And so as beneficial as medical marijuana is, and I do believe that, I still think the whole system needs to be refined a little bit further before we even consider any kind of operation within the township of Bedminster. So I just wanted to add that thought to you.
Thank you, Jim. Robin, any other? All right, so Fuquan and Melissa, thank you so much for the presentation. You guys were great in presenting the legislation, what the opportunities are for municipalities, and for entertaining our questions. And I know we've got some takeaway homework for you guys. And John, I presume you or Melissa, I mean, unless you want to bring the whole team back.
And get back with these answers.
Okay, and that'll be at the next, so Mr. Garcia and anyone else who had questions or interest in some of these homework assignments for the attorneys, that information will be presented at the next township committee meeting. So Fuquan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
to
Good
meet you
seeing you
guys.
again.
Good stuff. Thank you. Complicated topic.
Yep.
Making notes on, making sure we have all the questions.
Okay, so the condominium issue, distribution, so illegal distribution to minors in both situations, criminal or civil penalties. Chief,
Smoking in the car.
smoking in the car,
Smoking on public property.
Yeah, defining public property.
defining public property.
Public place is defined as, it's a long definition, but part of it is where alcohol consumption is not allowed. And I was a bartender, I remember people weren't allowed to take their drinks outside.
I think that's right, yeah.
So I don't think you'll be able to smoke outside of a bar or you're not allowed to smoke, or you can't drink going into a liquor store.
You probably can't do it in the King's Shopping Center parking lot.
Right.
So if you're gonna be,
I'm not sure how many people would want to
people will want to smoke wherever they can.
in a King's parking lot.
They will.
Yeah, the one here is Burnersville close. Yep.
No, we're keeping
Bedminster's
ours.
still here.
We're
good.
keeping
Yeah,
ours.
but Burnersville did close.
Well, come to this
Yeah,
one.
we got it
You're
here.
so far. I used to go to the second bar next door.
My wife Joan is my best friend.
Because the office is down.
Butcher
Oh,
at the
all right.
Bedminster Kings.
Yeah.
Since Burnsville is closed.
Uh-huh.
Bedminster's Kings was always a much better Kings than Burnsville's.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Morristown has one, so we go to Morristown.
Morristown's a
That's
great
easy.
one.
Morristown is a nice one too.
But I did just drive through the town before the meeting. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're trying to keep it that way. That's our job.
I'll let you guys continue your meeting.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you
very much.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. You sure you don't want to stay for the rest?
They want to watch the game.
Right. We know.
10 minutes, tip off.
I got a long ride.
Be
Drive
safe.
carefully.
Thank you.
Good night.
guys.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Fuquan.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the rest of the meeting to go through. We do have a lot, but we will go quickly. Approval of minutes. We have 3 minutes to go through. March 15, 2021 Township Committee meeting, March 15th, the closed session meeting, and March 22, our special budget work session meeting. Any questions or comments regarding those minutes? If none, may we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Robin. Permits and raffles. We have 4 permits and raffles. First is on-premise merchandise raffle to benefit Junior League of Morristown on Friday, May 7th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Hamilton Farm Golf Club, 1040 Pottersville Road, Bedminster. Second is on-premise 50/50 raffle to benefit Junior League of Morristown on Friday, May 7th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Hamilton Farm Golf Club, 1040 Pottersville Road, Bedminster. Third, social fair permit at Hamilton Farm Golf Club, May 10, 2021 from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. to benefit the Willow School. And the last one is social fair permit at Hamilton Farm Golf Club, May 24, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. to benefit the Willow School. Any questions or comments regarding those permits or raffles? Seeing none, may we motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And a good sign, I think this is a very good sign that we are seeing more social fair permits come past our agenda. Hopefully it means that things are freeing up and folks are doing stuff again. So that's a good sign. Monthly report discussion by subcommittee chair, Committeeman Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got meetings coming up later in the month, so I don't have too much to report tonight. Just can say that heard back from some folks up on Revere. Looks like they're getting ready to do some paving up there, so that's a good thing.
Oh, good.
And
Good, good,
we'll
good.
just keep that, keep you updated where we are with paving as we move forward in the spring and summer. But
So that'd be Revere and Sergeant Stoddard.
that's right.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
And then making our way to Oakboro in that area. So
Great.
that's
Okay,
it. More
thank
to come
you.
later in the month.
Committeeman Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, all. Board of Health, we did receive an update from Jim Norgalis, the Deputy Director at the Somerset County Department of Health regarding vaccine distribution. He and obviously a lot of elected officials are hearing about the lack of vaccine availability. The state is allocating the county health department about 700 doses per week, which they're capable of administering right now in about 4 hours. So supply is a constraining factor, not the ability to get shots in arms, but we remain hopeful that more doses will be allocated to Somerset County in the weeks to come. I just saw today that I think they just received the first shipment of J&J vaccine, and they're administering it to those who are unable to travel or leave their homes. So that's a good sign. Board of Ed, I attended the meeting on March 18th where the board introduced their annual budget, which includes tapping into their capital reserve to replace the roof on what is now a 28-year-old building. As somebody said, the good news is the roof only leaks when it rains, but the roof has reached the end of its useful life. You may recall last year, the Board of Ed was considering a referendum on the November ballot to raise the necessary funds to replace the roof, but then COVID hit. Since the debt on the building has been retired, the board elected to tap into the reserve for the amount of $2.1 million to repair the roof as opposed to asking taxpayers for the money. I think that's the right plan, given the fact that we're all still under significant economic stress, both now as well as we begin our post-COVID recovery. So as a result, the school tax is earmarked to go up about 2%, which is much less than the burden the taxpayers would have had to incur through the original referendum. So that's some good news. Mayor, I assume you'll talk about library and land use board. Thank you.
You can take library. I'll take land use.
Let's see, library, we reviewed the annual operating budget. We had a number of questions regarding, in particular, communications expenses and a few other items. So we deferred passage of that until this coming meeting.
Thank you. Committeewoman Mareski.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some quick updates for environmental. There's a meeting April 7th, this Wednesday. Mike Van Cruff is the program director for the New Jersey Invasive Species Strike Team. He's giving a program at this meeting. We've had him before. He's really interesting. And anybody who's looking to do new plantings in their home, this is a good time to take a look at that program to see which ones you should be using. We talked earlier, and I guess it was last month, about the seedling giveaway. It will be April 24th at the Bulky Waste Day down here on Miller Lane. And just a quick reminder about the.
Oh, so is that the seedling that originally we were thinking about doing at the farmer's market?
Correct. Yep, they're going to do it on Bulky Waste Day.
And there's a reason for doing it early.
Because they need to be planted.
Right. So, so originally the seedlings were to be given out at the farmer's market. It would be a great opportunity to get lots of folks in. But on the environmental commission, we have a tree expert, Whit Parker. All right, I assume this was from Whit.
It is.
And these trees got to get planted, so they can't stick around until May. So for folks who are interested, get your seedlings.
Yep.
At Bulky Waste Day. That's it. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry for that interruption.
That's okay. And another reminder about the Raritan Headwaters stream cleanup on Saturday, April 27th. Please register on the Raritan Headwaters website if you want to help. And just a quick note on Friends of Jacobus Vanderveer House. They did reorganize their executive board, so that's kind of exciting. And they're brainstorming what kind of programs they'll be able to do this year. Hopefully get a little more involved than we could last year with COVID. So they're thinking about some of the things, maybe getting some connection to farmers market, since farmers market is always very well received. So they're brainstorming on a whole bunch of things. And as I get more information, I'll let you know.
Great.
And that's all I have.
Do you have the information on the environmental committee meeting, the presentation? You want to get that up on?
The link, the Zoom link?
Well, actually, I was going to say either on the town Facebook so that we can let folks know that the information is going to be presented.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
It may already be.
Is it? No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
Because I think there will be some folks who are interested in the planting recommendations. Okay. Committeewoman Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to start with the rec update. This past Saturday, April 3rd, was the first ever Easter Bunny drive-through, which was COVID safe. And roughly 150 participants attended the drive-through. And the Easter Bunny and the Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department were there handing out candy to those who participated. They drove through, got some candy for Easter, and all the leftover candy was donated to the Agape House in Somerville, which is a shelter. Recreation opening day movie night. So in coordinates with the opening day of the farmers market, there's actually going to be a movie night that night, May 29th. So everybody save the date. And the rec committee voted to show the movie Field of Dreams, and there will be a tentative kickball game or tournament scheduled before the movie, and food trucks those are tentative ideas coming down. Somerset Hills Spring Outdoor Basketball. So Bedminster, Burnsville, and Peapack Gladstone Rec Departments are partnering to offer Somerset Hills Spring Basketball for girls and boys, and they'll be separated 3rd and 4th grade, 5th and 6th grade, and 7th and 8th grade. And so far there's 146 total participants signed up. So that's great. 2021 summer camps are a go. Registration opened on April 1st. The traveling teens trips only have a few spots left, which is great. That usually fills up quickly. So that's exciting. And there's some new camps to be offered. There's going to be fishing camp, a coil and stamp art camp, a clay art camp, sewing camp, lacrosse camp, Rainbow STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, science camp, and a racket sports camp. So that's exciting. And the deadline to register for camp without inquiring a late fee is June 11th. And one last thing is that this year, the Recreation Department will be asking residents to send in videos or photos as a Memorial Day tribute video for those who sacrificed their lives for peace and security of our country. So there's more to come on that, but that's very exciting. So that's all I have for rec. And then, but that was a lot. And then just the community development block grant meeting is this Wednesday. So I'll have an update on that after that. Okay. And that's all.
Great, thank you. So, hey, Gina, real quick.
Yeah.
How is the new rec director coordinating with the rec committee?
Very well. So the new rec director is doing a phenomenal job. He just hit the ground running. He has daily calls with the president, I think, of the rec advisory committee, or almost daily calls. So that's great. And he's just, got some new ideas, and he just came in and he just hit the ground running. He's still learning, but he attributes his ability to hit the ground running. He attributes that to all of Robin's organization, because everything is organized and in binders, and he's able to find everything. He doesn't have to go looking for things, and so he's very grateful for that. So he's doing great.
That's great. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Gina.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to cover some topics super quick. Land use board, there's a meeting coming up this Thursday. It is the application for a hospitality hotel corporate suites. This is at the property that was formally approved for Bedminster 1 office, which I think was about 147,000, 174,000 square feet of office. That was previously approved by the planning board years ago. Office market never rebounded to the point where that project went through. The property was rezoned, I'm going to say 7-8 years ago, maybe. John, do you recall?
2016, I think, after the Mount Laurel challenge, we rezoned that particular tract.
So that property was zoned to OR1, which is office research, but also allows for hospitality in the form of hotels and corporate suites. So the application coming before the land use board is for hotel corporate suites use of that property. Once again, that is the property south of the 78 overpass, immediately adjacent to the Bridgewater Manor. So we expect there'll be some interest in that application. Farmers market, we've got a meeting tomorrow. The farmers market season is quickly coming upon us. Needs to make sure that all the vendors are in place. May 29th is going to move awful fast. So we need to have everything in place. Getting a great response from the vendors that we've had in the prior years. Some that have been pop-ups or only half seasons, want a full commitment for the full season, which is just great news. And we're reaching out to the bands to make sure that we've got music in place. I know there's also been discussion about coordinating with rec to do some family fun days at the farmers market. So we'll see if that can get that in place as well. The other thing I want to talk about is Office of Emergency Management. Committeeman Hickey and I attended an OEM meeting, in part to go over where we stand on COVID response, looking over the numbers again. Jim McAllis from the county again reiterated to OEM, just as he has with Board of Health, is the lack of supplies coming into Somerset County. So Committeeman Hickey mentioned that they're getting 700, 750 maybe, but it's really 700 doses a week allocated to the Somerset County distribution facility, and they could do those in about 3 to 4 hours. The demand is so high, and they're just not getting the number of vaccinations that is appropriate, right? That's just call it as we hear it. So that was disappointing. We covered some other OEM issues on where we stand on COVID response, on applications and what the needs are of our different first responders. But we also took the OEM meeting to do a recap and a lessons learned of the Larkspur Court fire. And it was a tremendous response by the Far Hills Bedminster Fire Department. On the scene within, I think, 8 to 9 minutes of the call being dispatched.
Yep.
It's incredible. And that was at midnight. So Friday into Saturday morning. Response was terrific. The investigation is continuing. OEM initiated the calls immediately, and that's to the credit of Chief Rock over there. Chief, remember that? You were there. Yeah. So we looked at where we could make improvements. We went through the call list, right? So OEM coordinator was out of state that night, so quickly went to the second call, the third call, to make sure that all the wheels were in motion. To the extent that we needed warming centers or sheltering places, those calls were made. We looked at different ways that there could be improvement on the call list. And that certainly is something that the OEM coordinators is going to look to explore a little bit further. Also, one of the comments was, and we're going to talk about Village Green for a second. So when the fire departments got there, the first hydrant accessed was the hydrant located on Hills Drive. And that was immediately put to use supplying water to the fire. A truck fire engine came from, I believe it was Green Knoll, and went to look for a secondary water source. And they spent fair amount of time trying to find the hydrant that was buried under snow at the time. Now, that fire hydrant and that engine was never needed for deploying water at the scene. So it turned out to be unnecessary. But, right, so lessons learned. Lesson learned is, had it been necessary, there would have been undue time spent in identifying the hydrant and accessing it. So the word out to the associations, and this is not to point at Village Green, but to all associations, when you're doing your snow removal, work with your contractors. Don't, if they do cover up your hydrants, expose them as soon as you can. Because we don't want to be put in a situation where our first responders are spending time identifying and accessing hydrants because they're otherwise buried. And then in the discussions at OEM, it just wasn't snow. It was during spring and summer. It could also be bushes and overgrowth of vegetation. So certainly something that Colin and I said we would take back to the Township Committee and raise at the public session, that, everyone, so whether it's on your private property, it's on your street, or it's in the homeowners associations, keep your hydrants in good shape and make sure that they're accessible.
Is there no map of the hydrants? And I'll tell you, I had a small discussion with one of my neighbors when I tried to clear stuff away from a hydrant. And they said to me, don't worry, the firemen know where the hydrants are. And I said, okay, so that I didn't have any further discussions with this person, but I was not under the knowledge that they did. Is that something that they have, or we could help them develop, or they know how to do that?
So
comments.
so it's a great question. So within the last year, Far Hills, Bedminster, I'm not sure, to some extent in Pottersville, they probably know where they are because they're really on two roads, at least in Bedminster, on the Bedminster side. Far Hills, Bedminster has gone through and they've been GPSing the hydrants and putting them down so that they could be accessed from their cell phones or laptops. So that's in process. It certainly, I believe they've got most of the streets, whether they're within the condos themselves. I believe that's the case. But I will tell you the observations from the Larkspur court incident was that it was a, first off, it was a fire company coming from Green Knoll. What was interesting is that one of the firefighters from the Green Knoll department used to live in Larkspur. So he knew exactly where that hydrant was. It still took him minutes and not just 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. I think it was 15 to 20, maybe even longer to dig out that hydrant.
They had moved 10 cubic yards of snow
Wow.
because they had used that area to pile up the snow from the parking lot.
Yes, and the good snow landscaper combo put sticks and stuff where the thing is, because we know that's what happens.
And look, and some
But it was a
some
huge
associations do that. Some
We
associations
dig
do.
ours out.
This one wasn't. Now, once again, it wasn't needed for that incident. It wasn't needed for that response. It was going to be connected to as a backup. Once again, it was not needed. It did not delay the extinguishing of the fire. But once again, when I called for that OEM meeting, it was lessons learned, right? Even if there were great things, make sure they're replicated for the next incident. If there were things that could have been improved, identify them and put them back into the OEM manual. And one of the takeaways of that OEM meeting was that we are scheduled for a tabletop drill of what we're looking at, June, July?
Yeah, June, I think.
Yeah, so there's going to be a tabletop drill. We'll probably run it here and we'll run through a scenario that may involve power outage, may involve a storm or some other precipitating event. And there's a whole plan to run through and not just cleanly, not just a clean situation, but sort of a couple of wild cards will be introduced into that scenario to make sure that it's not just, we just follow a straight manual and this is what we do, but what do you do when things go wrong, right? You're traveling from here to the school and you can't get there because there's a tree down in the road, because you had a storm. So you had to make sure that all OEM is responsive to unknown situations that pop up, because they always do. That's what I got for my report. Ms. Sullivan, who's ever doing administrator's report?
I'm an assistant administrator.
Okay, that's good too.
Okay, just real briefly, the phone system was out for the balance of today here at Town Hall, also affecting the court and the police department. We had Eastern Datacom here later this afternoon replace the server. Apparently, the hard drive crashed at some point over the weekend. So around 3 o'clock this afternoon, service was restored. In the meantime, we had my cell phone and email up there, and we were relaying messages to all the departments, so it worked. Senior transportation, the agreement that we've been waiting for is finally with the Somerset County Commissioners for approval. So hopefully we'll be starting that service sooner rather than later. The postcards regarding the service were sent out on March 29th, and then this week we're sending out the Township Senior and Disabled Resident Services Guide that we shared with you all last week. And in the construction department, we onboarded 2 new employees this week. Caitlin Patel joined us April 1st as a part-time employee up to 20 hours a week. And she will be serving as the assistant to the technical assistant to the construction official. And Kathleen Nagy DeRosa started today and will be replacing Joe Haggerty at the end of this month.
Replacing Joe in what position?
As a taco.
As a taco. How about zoning?
That has not been covered yet.
Okay. But that's still posted?
It's still posted.
Okay. All right.
And that's all
Thank
I have.
you. Ms. Sullivan, do you have anything to add?
Just a reminder, we have a staff meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. and affordable housing tomorrow afternoon at 4, both Zoom meetings.
Zoom.
There's affordable housing?
At 4?
Wasn't there something?
Yeah, that's
the other one.
That's us. All right, that's
Oh.
Zoom too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
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 Zoom's,
Are you gonna take either from here?
I'm gonna do Zoom from both, from
Okay, from home or from here?
home,
Okay.
my pajamas.
We're glad you're dressed tonight.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Discussion on introduced ordinance scheduled for public hearings. We don't have any, but we do have introduction of ordinance. Ordinance 2021-03, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. This ordinance provides that municipality may, when authorized by ordinance, appropriate the difference between the amount of its actual final appropriation and the 3.5% percentage rate as an exception to its final appropriations in either of the next 2 succeeding years. The public hearing for this ordinance is scheduled for April 19, 2021 at 7 p.m. at the Bedminster Municipal Building. Ms. Sullivan, every year we do this and it doesn't sound clear any more than it did the first time I read it. What does that mean?
Basically, for the amount that we are under the 2% cap, which we historically are, we're able to bank not any money, but bank the percentage in the cap bank. And if we need it for an emergency situation in a future budget in the next 2 years, in 2022 or 2023, we may use it at that time. In order to bank it, as I said, you need to do an ordinance, which is what is before you for introduction.
So that establishes a cap bank, and in I think my years on Township Committee, we have not used our bank capacity, right?
In my history, we've used the cap bank once many years ago.
Okay, so have not been used, but this is sort of a security measure. With that, move your motion to introduce ordinance 2021-03 with a public hearing for April 19th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Public hearing of
roll call vote.
Oh, sorry.
Roll call votes. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing of ordinances, we have none. Consent agenda, we have items A through J on the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments or requests to remove any of those resolutions off the consent agenda by Township Committee? No, 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 no. Seeing none, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to resolutions not on the consent agenda. And the first one is an oldie. Someone can make the determination if it's a goodie, but we'll come to that. Resolution 2021-037. It's resolution authorizes the mayor and deputy clerk to execute an interlocal agreement between the Township of Bedminster and the Somerset County Department of Public Works, Division of Roads and Bridges, to assist pedestrians in crossing Washington Valley Road, County Route 620. So when we last left off, this is the interlocal agreement between Bedminster and the county for construction and operation and maintenance of a crosswalk and beacon to be located at the corner of Hills Drive, crossing Washington Valley, connecting to Timberbrook on the other side. In looking at this issue before, this is something that was presented to us by the county. We seem to support the concept of having the beacon and the crosswalk in that location as a safety measure, certainly helping the kids from Timberbrook get to some of the bus stop across the road and getting back to Timberbrook. There were some concerns about the way the agreement was drafted, particularly that there was a provision in there, I believe it was paragraph 9, that talked about Bedminster indemnifying the county for any claims asserted for the operation of the beacon or the use of the crosswalk. We had asked Attorney Bellardo to go back to the county and push that issue. That did not seem to get anywhere. And at the last meeting, I said I would raise this issue directly with Colleen Marr, the county administrator, who I will say was completely receptive to our concerns. She is a mayor herself. She's the mayor of Fanwood. And she made some calls, gave me a call back, said, all taken care of. Have your attorney strike that offending language regarding the indemnification, and we can move forward. So this current version of the agreement, turn to John, you want to?
Yes, I see I have two versions. The version that you're adopting is the version that deletes the indemnification provision and only has 13 paragraphs in it. So just make sure that is the one you're adopting tonight and not the former one.
So the language that I have attached to this resolution still says indemnify.
I have one that says don't indemnify. So.
If you look up at the top, it says with Bedminster edits and then original from county.
Right.
Okay.
We got two.
So just,
okay.
just make sure you got the right one.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
so they're both in there. Okay.
Yeah.
Just for comparison.
Oh, okay, got it.
you're adopting the one without the indemnification.
Let's adopt that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one with 13, not 14.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for that explanation, John. Okay, any further, I think we've gone over this agreement about 6-7 times already. We have a motion to approve resolution 2021-037.
So moved.
Second.
Call Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Ms. Marcy.
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez.
Aye.
Aye. We previously approved resolution 2021-051, which is was appointing Sergeant Polito. So once again, great job there. Resolution 2021-052, authorizing the execution of a memorandum of agreement between the Borough of Peapack and Gladstone and the Township of Bedminster for daily management of the sanitary sewer transmission system. And that goes through the STAB Sewer Transmission Advisory Board. We'll have a reference in there. John, you just want to quickly, whether you or Judy want to walk through your review of the agreement?
I will let Ms. Sullivan do that because I was not involved in the negotiations of the agreement. It was basically negotiated by staff here. So given that I had de minimis involvement, I'll let Ms. Sullivan take you through it.
Okay, that being said, As you all know, or well, those of us working on the STAB committee, we have PPAC Gladstone's C2 sewer utility employee retired. Their second C2 employee that managed the sewer utility came and is now working for Bedminster Township. So the suggestion was made that since the facility is actually located in Bedminster Township and is owned by Bedminster Township, that Bedminster Township may want to consider taking the lead in the shared service. Previously, PPAC was running the day-to-day operations of the pumping station, and this memorandum of agreement would reverse that Bedminster would take the lead in managing the facility. This went back and forth. The PPAC Gladstone attorney, John Bruder, reviewed the agreement. We went over it through STAB. There was discussion, should Far Hills be listed in the memorandum of agreement, even though they would not be participating as any of their employees participating, but because it impacts Far Hills, it was decided that they should be a signatory only on the agreement. So that was added. And their attorney, Mr. Attorney Sordillo for Far Hills did add that portion. And then that final draft was sent over to Mr. Bellardo for just to make sure that all the legal parts of the agreement were proper, and he agreed they were. Basically, Bedminster then will be taking on the day-to-day operations of the pump station and also on weekends, Saturday and Sunday. If there is an emergency or a shortfall in staffing, PPAC Gladstone would act as a backup to fill that shortfall with employees or equipment. And then if that is the case, they will then bill us for that service as part of the agreement. All those costs are then divided up amongst the three municipalities, PPAC, Far Hills, and Bedminster. And it's based on the percentage of the sewer flow, which is metered annually. So.
And those, and Judy, once again, those expenses are then borne by the ratepayers?
Yes, so the ratepayers would pay the Bedminster portion, the PPAC portion by the PPAC ratepayers, and the same thing for Far Hills.
So for Bedminster residents who do not live in the sewer service area that is.
This does not impact them at all.
So if you live in the hills, you're not subject to this because this is not part of your transmission system. And if you live in an area where you are on septic, you're not subject to these expenses either. It's essentially for within Bedminster, it's Bedminster Village. Any questions or comments regarding the agreement or resolution 2021-052? May we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the last resolution for tonight is Resolution 2021-058. This is the introduction of the 2021 municipal budget. And the public hearing for the municipal budget is scheduled for May 3 at 7 p.m. And as Judy has told me in the past, this resolution is to be read into record. And so let me read this. This municipal budget notice, Township of Bedminster, Resolution 2021-058. Section 1, municipal budget of the Township of Bedminster, County of Somerset for the fiscal year 2021. Be it resolved that the following statements of revenues and appropriations shall constitute the municipal budget for the current year, 2021. Be it further resolved that said budget be published in the issue of April 22, 2021, Burnsville News, or it be published in the Burnsville News in the issue of April 22, 2021. The governing body of the Township of Bedminster does hereby approve the following as the budget for the new current year. And then we would have our vote. And notice is hereby given that the budget and tax resolution approved by the governing body of the Township of Bedminster, County of Somerset on April 5, 2021. And that the hearing on the budget and tax resolution will be held at Township Municipal Building on May 3, 2021, 7 p.m., at which time and place objections to said budget and tax resolution for the 2021 current year may be presented by taxpayers or other interested persons. All right, so perhaps not the most artful reading, but there you go. That's the resolution, introduction of the budget, and then the budget will be heard at the May 3rd meeting. You will need a resolution to approve what I just read. I'm not reading it.
Just to elaborate a little bit, the budget itself, the document was sent over by the auditor today after a final review. We will be posting that on the website for residents to review and prepared for any questions at the May 3rd hearing. There's also what's called a user-friendly budget, which is a condensed version of the budget, a little easier for members of the public to understand with numbers. We will be posting that as well, so that the residents can view it. If you want me to give a few of the high points, I can, or we can save that for May 3rd.
So there for the public hearing. May we have a motion to approve 2021-058?
So moved. Oops, second.
Mr. Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and may we have a motion to approve the bill list pending review of individual invoices?
Second. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
And new business, we've already covered the cannabis legislation, so we'll go over that real quickly. Old business, something I do want to raise that's actually not on the agenda, which is at our next Township Committee meeting. So it's April 19th. We will have a presentation by the New Jersey Department of Transportation regarding the traffic improvements for River Road, Jug Handle with 202, 206. What?
Yay.
Yay. Yay is right. You know, this is something that we had a series of accidents, but actually we raised this issue to DOT before some of the more notorious ones that occurred. You know, to bring back to farmer's market, Colin and I sitting there at, 8 o'clock in the morning with Robin, and, we're setting up and we hear screech, people making U-turns at River Road, people making left turns when they're not supposed to be making left turns, making right turns from center lanes that are not meant to be right turns. So I reached out to DOT. We started talking about the intersection. One of the things that they did right away was to change the signal timing. So if you're making a left from the Jug Handle, you are no longer facing incoming or oncoming left coming from River Road. And if you're making a left from River Road, you're not going to be facing oncoming lefts from the Jug Handle. So they did that. I got to say, DOT did that within a week and a half or so
Quick.
of that conversation. The presentation on April 19th is much more detailed. It's work that's going to be scheduled for later in spring, but it addresses some of the confusion that folks have had at that intersection. There's a lot to cover, and the whole DOT team will be available for April 19th. Committeeman Stevenson, do you want to cover the affordable housing information session?
Sure. So on March 30th, we had round 2 for the folks that couldn't appear for round 1. Maybe 75, 80 folks at the high point, Robin?
82.
82 was the high mark, folks that got into the meeting, and they were all able to get in. And, we just sort of took questions and answers. Mr. DeFazio, representing the BHHC, was in attendance. We had Heather Mahali from CPG&H as well. Some of the participants wanted to go awry and get into what CGP&H is going to do in the future, and that wasn't the point of the meeting, and we referred them to CGP&H to follow down any questions that they have. But I'd like to think that everyone got their questions answered. Certainly, we ran the timeout and heard every question that was posed. But again, it's just educating the public as to what exactly the lawsuit is and what it is not. I think it's important for folks to understand that, this is not the BHHC or the township in any way trying to get a fee that was not otherwise set in stone back in the 80s when this project was created. And I think that's the important takeaway here, is that this is for the longevity of the program. It's for the folks coming down the pike can enjoy the opportunity to live in affordable housing here in town, and to make sure that that burden doesn't fall solely to the taxpayers, because there was a program and a plan put in play back when the Hills was developed. And the problem was that it wasn't playing out 30 years later the way it was drawn up. So the lawsuit is designed to stop that. But I thought it went well, and we answered the questions as best we could. And like I said, I don't think anybody was left with a hand raised at the end. So
that's right.
In that regard, it was very positive.
Right. We stayed for over 2.5 hours to make sure that every question was addressed. And for both Doug and I, just want to thank Sal DeFazio and Heather Mahali for I think they did a great job answering those questions and doing what they can to clarify those comments. Some people may not be satisfied with the answers that were given, but they certainly were satisfied that they had the opportunity to ask those questions. And they may want to see the recapture fee go away. That's not going to happen. So I think Sal did a great job. I also want to thank Doug, for also explaining the distinction of what the declaratory judgment means and what it doesn't. So I just want to thank everyone for their participation. Sticking with Committeeman Stevenson, anything new on Pluckman Park?
Yeah, so nothing earth-shattering to report. After Colin and I met with the prospective purchaser, I did have an opportunity to communicate with Heather again at CGP&H, just to say what's out there. Are there funding sources that could be used to try to put some money back into this property? I think we all recognize that the property's got some age on it and it's got some deterioration. And then, of course, the economics of it aren't always great to be able to throw a lot of money back into the project. And Heather was great. I mean, took a little time because she actually rolled the sleeves up and went to start talking with some folks at the state about potential funding sources. Did get back to me with the information. I forwarded that along to the prospective purchasers, and they're doing an evaluation. So we'll wait to hear what happens. But look, if it doesn't work out with this purchaser, perhaps we have a discussion with the owner to see what their intentions are, because I think we've got some other ideas.
Right. That's great. I also just want to, just quickly mention that the work that Doug just did, working with Heather, is frankly something that the property owners or the prospective purchasers really should be doing on their own. But in Bedminster, we sort of got a can-do attitude here at the Township Committee. And, if we see that there's an opportunity that needs to be explored, we'll do it.
Right.
We'll help them. So I just, that's just
We've
great.
got a collective problem here at the
Yeah.
site. It's not going away. It's restricted, from what I'm told, into perpetuity.
Yes.
And the economics of it will never change. So if we're being told there's an economic problem, try to, keep it up.
Yeah, there's
upgraded and maintained.
Their ability to increase rent is constrained by the agreement and some of the federal programs. So for Pluckman Park, whatever, money it's generating, that's, subject to some cost of living and some other consequences or other large capital expenses. That's what they can do. The pilot, their ability to do a pilot is going to be conditioned upon probably another capital project. Which, that really is not capital. What they need they really need is maintenance expense. And if there's an opportunity to find money for it, just as Doug said, it behooves us to help them because it improves the community.
Exactly.
So thanks again. Committeeman Hickey, utilities.
Utilities, thank you, Mayor.
Cables, everything's great. Everyone's getting their,
I wish I could say that there.
their designated cable speed, download, uploads, everything's going fine.
Everything's hunky-dory. Along those lines, I participated in a BPU hearing on March 16th regarding Altice. I'll give you a few observations. First off, we are not alone. The complaints came in far and wide across the state. Every municipality seemed to have a complaint. No one is happy with Altice. Secondly, Marilyn Davis appears to be the only Altice employee in New Jersey. I know I say that tongue in cheek, but I will tell you that every municipality said, they reference, oh, we're working with Marilyn. She's great, but we're still having issues. That's a concern in and of itself. If she's handling the complaints from every municipality across the state. Altice self-reported they saw a 40% increase in demand as a result of the pandemic. As we've indicated previously, the service was bad before the pandemic, and then their performance just degraded further in the middle of the pandemic. There was a lot of feedback demanding that the BPU exercise its own authority to regulate Altice, as well as claims of false advertising and violation of consumer protection laws. I'll tell you, for my money, I'd rather our ground game focus on getting our local facilities upgraded as we've been doing, as opposed to pursuing remedies from a legal perspective, because I think the latter is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money. We have there, as you're aware, put an update on the Bedminster homepage. Thank you, Robin. In terms of the current activities that are underway to improve our local cable system. And as I say every time, please, if you can't solve something through Altice customer care, let us know. Let Marilyn Davis know. She's been very responsive. She's been very effective in terms of escalating issues within Altice to get them resolved, and we're already seeing some positive results through that. So keep on it. Do you want me to talk about JCP&L, New Jersey American Water? Okay, we'll do the whole thing. JCP&L, dare I say, we've had a few major windstorms over the last several weeks, and there were very few outage reports. Incidentally, it was about 2 years ago to the day that we kicked off our meeting with JCP&L. We had a packed house in this room.
That's right.
Not too many people happy, and rightly so. I would say the combination of more rigorous tree trimming, inspections, more reclosers being deployed in the network, as well as all the local equipment upgrades we have pursued over the last 24 months appear to have been paying off. Obviously, the test comes this summer, so let's see if these actions and the lessons learned from JCP&L during Tropical Storm Isai actually proved to be enough. So stay tuned. And then finally, New Jersey American Water, I'm pursuing getting a schedule and a plan for the road repairs to Riverwood, Hillside, and the surrounding area now that the water main work we originally requested from New Jersey American Water is nearing completion. We also received a complaint from a resident regarding some road repair work done on Ski Hill Drive following an emergency water main repair. I put a message into Dave Mayer, our government relations executive from New Jersey American Water, and he indicated we should be receiving a response on both those matters very shortly. That's all I have there.
Okay. Thank you. Township Committee comments. We'll start with Ms. Fernandez.
No, I just wanted to, thank our legal team for their informative presentation on the cannabis. It's a very detailed presentation. There's a lot to it. So I just wanted to thank them for that. And that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Moreski.
I want to echo Gina's thanks to our legal team. It's going to be an interesting road going down this cannabis trail. And thank you to Robin and the team for doing the Easter Bunny candy distribution, because I'm sure that gave some normalcy to a still kind of restricted Easter weekend. So thank you guys for doing that.
Mr. Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to mention NewJersey.com article came out today. Bedminster once again had the lowest taxes and the lowest equalized tax rate in all of Somerset County. A realtor friend of mine once said her clients move here because of those delicious Bedminster taxes. I love that phrase. And that doesn't happen by accident. Obviously, that happens because of all the hard work of our municipal employees and the leadership that starts at the center of the dais. Thank you, Mayor. I know we just introduced the budget tonight. I think folks will be pleased about the news. And just want to thank all my colleagues for their hard work, Mayor for your leadership, Judy and Robin Ray. Thank you for setting the bar so high so that our taxes remain low and keeping our little slice in New Jersey affordable. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to actually say to Judy, I'm sorry I wasn't able to make your send-off party. I made the call not to come because I wasn't feeling well, and I regret not being able to be there. I saw the pictures, I got the lowdown after the fact, so I'm happy to hear that it was a true, sincere and joyous send-off, and a couple tears along the way, I understand, but I just wanted to tell you that I was sorry I wasn't able to be there, and I certainly wanted to be, and just wish you all the best in the future.
Hey, if I could just jump in for a second. March 26th will be a night I will remember for the rest of my life. It was a great night, so thank you all. And the palm tree is coming next Monday.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank Chief Roth. Yeah, that's right, you, over there. I'm thanking you. So,
Poor Chief, what time did you get up this morning?
yeah, he's been up for like 24 hours now.
10 minutes to 4.
Yeah, so we'll be quick. So Doug and I participated in the police promotion review. So once again, congratulations to Sergeant Polito. He's been with the force for 25 years. But I just want everyone to know that the process that we went through this time is a little bit different than prior promotion reviews. The police redid everything. I'm sorry, Chief Rock redid everything. He worked with our TBO, he worked with our new HR consulting team. He put together questions, he put together the threshold issues. And this is sort of the extra stuff that the chief does when he's not busy protecting us. He's also busy managing his team and setting it up and doing it in a way that is, look, there's only going to be one promotion to sergeant at that time, right? There's a number of eligible, unqualified officers. He had to develop the standards and make sure that they were replicable standards and that it's something that can be redeployed the next time around. And it's something that you have confidence in that process itself. And just from Doug and I participating in the interview process and having gone through the materials, and then once again, having met the 3 candidates, I think the process went great. And I think that is because of your leadership, Chief. So thank you very much for putting that together. And in the end, I think you made a great selection. As Doug said, there really was no bad selection. They were great options. All the candidates presented themselves well. So once again, thank you. That's all I have. We do not have an executive session. May we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Good night, Judy. Judy.
Bye, Judy, bye.
You take recording off and we're done. Nice.